In this formation's current state, there's no way that one piece of hierarchical yin corpse lightning would be able to break it, Taoist San Quan replied with furrowed brows. I'm naturally aware of that. Huang Yuanzi flipped a hand over as he spoke to reveal 3 thumb-sized gray beads that were riddled with thin crimson threads. You have 3 pieces of this lightning. You really have made thorough preparations for this trip, Taoist San Quan said with a surprised expression. We have to make haste. Fellow Taoist immortal has just destroyed that person's secret technique, so they could be arriving soon, Huang Yuanzi said. Rest assured, with 3 pieces of hierarchical yin corpse lightning, it'll only take an instant to destroy the rest of this formation, Taoist San Quan replied with a confident smile. He then opened his mouth to expel 3 badges of different colors, which quickly swelled to around 10 feet in size each at his behest. After that, he made a hand seal, and the giant 3-headed python projection behind him also opened its mouths to release 3 bursts of light of different colors that surged into the badge of the corresponding color. A loud buzzing sound instantly rang out from the badges, and countless runes appeared on their surfaces. The badges then suddenly transformed into around 300 to 400 small flags, each of which was roughly a foot in size. Each flag was translucent and shimmering with spiritual light, while emanating hints of the power of laws. Huang Yuanzi's pupils contracted slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately sent one of the 3 gray beads in his hand hurtling through the air. Elsewhere, the law-destruction eye on Han Li's glabella had already disappeared, and he was appraising a cracked azure crystal ball before him with a cold expression. The fact that he was able to sense my secret technique from so far away indicates that he's far more powerful than the average Grand Ascension stage being, but judging from the power of that attack, he's still nowhere near the caliber of that female Usra spider. The only potential factor of concern is that I don't know if he possesses any special secret techniques or abilities, Han Li murmured to himself, then flipped a hand over to summon a golden talisman. He then raised a hand, and the talisman disappeared into thin air as a streak of golden light. After that, he stood still on the spot, seemingly waiting for something. A short while later, a burst of spatial fluctuations emerged before Han Li, and a ball of golden flames suddenly appeared alongside the sound of a bewildered female voice. "Brother Han, is that you? Why are you here?" A hint of surprise appeared on Han Li's face upon hearing this voice. "Fairy Yan, why is this transmission talisman in your hands? I recall I gave it to Yuan Yao prior to my departure." Yan Li was initially elated to hear Han Li's voice, but she then replied in a panicked voice, "Brother Han, it really is you. Get away from here right now. Master is currently transcending his heavenly tribulation, and there are 3 Grand Ascension stage intruders outside. If you get caught up in this, you're going to be killed for sure. As for this talisman, Yuan Yao gave it to me for safekeeping. She's currently helping Master transcend his tribulation, so she has no time to worry about anything else." So it really is fellow Taoist Qing Yuanzi who's transcending his tribulation. In that case, I'm. Before Han Li had a chance to finish his sentence, 3 earth-shattering explosions suddenly erupted near the valley in the distance, following which 3 scintillating gray suns rose up into the air before surging in all directions as massive waves of gray light. Countless giant flags appeared near the gray suns before releasing a series of threads of light in all directions, impaling and destroying all of the giant ghostly shadows in their path. As a result, the sea of crimson mist was instantly vanquished. Impossible, how did they break the first formation so quickly? Yan Li's immediately became extremely horrified, and the ball of golden light suddenly flashed erratically before exploding on its own. Thus, Yan Li's voice was naturally cut off in an abrupt manner. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, and he cast his gaze toward the valley before immediately flying in that direction as a streak of azure light. The streak of azure light quickly covered a distance of several tens of kilometers, upon which it arrived near the valley. The azure light then faded to reveal Han Li, who cast his gaze downward to find that the 3 gray suns had already faded, as had the massive waves of gray light. Huang Yuanzi's trio were hovering above the giant door, appraising Han Li with cold expressions. "Who are you? Did you come here for Qing Yuanzi?" Huang Yuanzi asked. It looks like the 3 of you are enemies of Qing Yuanzi's trying to take advantage of his heavenly tribulation," Han Li said with a faint smile. Huang Yuanzi harumphed coldly in response, "HMPH, so what if that's the case? Are you an ally that Qing Yuanzi invited to protect him?" "I didn't come here intentionally to protect him, but fellow Taoist Qing Yuanzi is an acquaintance of mine, so I'm obligated to step in here. I hope you can all do me a favor and leave, Han Li replied in an unhurried manner. Why should we do you a favor? Who do you think you are, and what do you make of us? I have a sworn vendetta against Qing Yuanzi. Anyone who dares to stand in my way will be killed, Huang Yuanzi said with a furious look in his eyes. I don't care what differences you have with Qing Yuanzi, but if you insist on continuing, then I'll be forced to oppose you, Han Li replied in a calm fashion. All right, let's see how you plan to oppose all three of us on your own. I'd advise you to leave now, and I'd still be willing to let you go. Otherwise, it'll be too late for regrets once you perish here, Huang Yuanzi threatened with a menacing expression. I won't know if I can handle all three of you at once until I try, and if you really have what it takes to kill me, then so be it, Han Li replied in a nonchalant manner. In that case, you can die now, Huang Yuanzi said with a vicious expression. Almost at the exact same moment, a thunderous roar rang out behind Han Li. Immediately thereafter, an inky black fist emerged amid a burst of spatial fluctuations, before instantly reaching Han Li like a thick bolt of black lightning. Han Li's expression remained completely unchanged, and he didn't even turn around as he thrust a golden palm behind himself at an incredible angle, striking the black fist with unerring accuracy. An earth-shattering boom rang out, and a massive explosion of golden and black light ensued, causing the nearby space to warp and quake violently. In the aftermath of the clash, Han Li remained completely still on the spot, while a massive figure emerged several tens of feet behind him before stumbling back close to 20 steps, and only then was the giant figure able to steady himself before casting a stunned gaze toward Han Li. The giant figure was none other than the immortal Heavenly Lord, and right at this moment, the immortal Heavenly Lord standing beside Huang Yuanzi abruptly exploded into specks of black light amid a dull thump. Prior to Han Li's arrival, the immortal Heavenly Lord had already unleashed a concealment secret technique in order to facilitate a sneak attack, leaving only a clone beside Huang Yuanzi. Huang Yuanzi's trio was completely astonished by what they had just witnessed. The immortal Heavenly Lord was vastly renowned for his tremendous strength, yet he had just been forced onto the back foot in a clash of physical bodies, even though he was unleashing a sneak attack from the shadows. Huang Yuanzi's expression darkened even further as he cast his gaze toward Han Li, but he didn't hesitate to sweep a hand through the air, upon which countless yellow threads erupted out of his body before surging toward Han Li in unison. Taoist San Quan also sprang into action, quickly making a hand seal. Spatial fluctuations erupted above him, and the three-headed python projection's three heads abruptly plunged downward, before vanishing into three plumes of azure smoke. In the next instant, the three giant pythons' heads emerged above Han Li, then bit down viciously toward him in unison, sending a foul odor wafting through the air. The immortal Heavenly Lord also quickly transformed into a mountainous giant, as if he had already choreographed this sequence in advance with his two companions, and he raised a massive foot before stomping down toward Han Li. His foot was as huge as a house and had a glistening black sheen, as if it were constructed from iron and steel. As soon as the foot was stomped down through the air, countless bright golden patterns appeared on its surface, and a devastating aura surged through the air. Following the immortal Heavenly Lord's failed surprise attack, the Huang Yuanzi's trio was attacking Han Li in unison, clearly in an attempt to crush him in one fell swoop. Han Li heaved a faint sigh as he swept a palm through the air, conjuring up a gray light barrier out of thin air. The Provenance True Devil projection then appeared behind him amid a flash of golden light before swelling to several 100 feet in size, then unleashed countless fist projections with its 6 fists toward the giant foot and the three pythons' heads. The thin threads unleashed by Huang Yuanzi struck the gray light barrier first, creating a sound akin to rain falling upon a banana leaf, and despite the enormous power imbued within them, they were only able to plunge several inches into the light barrier before being stopped cold in their tracks. Chapter 23-22, Battle Outside the Valley 2. A cold smile appeared on Han Li's face as he made a hand seal, and powerful energy fluctuations immediately erupted out of the gray light barrier in a frenzy. Upon making contact with these energy fluctuations, the thin threads were immediately shattered. At the same time, the golden fist projections clashed with the balls of light released by the three giant pythons' heads, and even though the balls of light were imbued with incredible power, they were also promptly destroyed. As for the giant black foot that was stomping down toward Han Li, it was tremoring violently in the face of the first projections, but it was still descending bit by bit. A cold look flashed through Han Li's eyes upon seeing this, and the giant Providence True Devil projection behind him suddenly vanished at his behest. In the next instant, the space behind the immortal Heavenly Lord twisted and warped, following which the giant golden body formed by the Providence True Devil projection emerged. The golden body's three faces were completely expressionless, and two of its arms reached out like lightning before grabbing onto the immortal Heavenly Lord's shoulders. The immortal Heavenly Lord's heart jolted upon seeing this, and he immediately tried to shrug off the golden body, but piercing purplish golden light suddenly began to radiate from the golden body's hands, and the immortal Heavenly Lord felt his own body become heavier all of a sudden, rooting him to the spot for an instant. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the golden body thrust its other four golden fists toward the giant's chest with devastating might. The immortal Heavenly Lord let loose an enraged roar, and a suit of dark green armor appeared over his entire body amid a flash of black light. At the same time, the two curved horns on his head transformed into a pair of giant black blades that were plunged forward viciously. Two dull thumps rang out as two of the golden body's fists were repelled by the horns, but the other two fists struck the giant's chest, and the sound of cracking bones immediately rang out. Han Li's Providence True Devil arts had almost been cultivated to its very maximal extent, and it was being combined with several other secret techniques, so the Providence Golden Body was naturally far more powerful than even the average Grand Ascension stage being could imagine. Golden and black light intertwined in front of the immortal Heavenly Lord, following which two massive indentations were punched into his suit of dark green armor. The suit of armor then completely shattered, and two bursts of tremendous force flooded into his body, sending him flying through the air before he could even make a sound. An earth-shattering boom rang out down below, and the immortal Heavenly Lord was slammed several tens of feet deep into the ground, leaving less than half of his body still above the surface of the earth. All of this had taken place, virtually, in the blink of an eye. Han Li chuckled coldly as he made a grabbing motion, and an azure longsword immediately appeared in his grasp amid a flash of azure light. With a nonchalant flick of his wrist, countless streaks of azure sword chi was unleashed, and they transformed into a sword mountain during their descent. The immortal Heavenly Lord immediately tried to take evasive measures, but his meridians were in disarray in the aftermath of the heavy blows he had just received, thereby temporarily immobilizing him. As such, he could open his mouth to release a giant black shield, which transformed into a light barrier to protect him from above. The light barrier didn't appear to be anything special, but it was able to keep most of the azure sword chi unleashed by Han Li at bay, with only several streaks of sword chi that were far sharper than the rest managing to pierce through the light barrier before striking the immortal Heavenly Lord's body with vicious force. Several deep sword wounds immediately appeared on the immortal Heavenly Lord's body, almost slicing him in half. However, the immortal Heavenly Lord suddenly let loose a thunderous roar, and countless crimson threads erupted out of his wounds before intertwining to heal his injuries at an astonishing rate discernible even to the naked eye. Instantaneous regeneration. Han Li faltered slightly upon seeing this, but a derisive smile then appeared on his face as he raised his azure longsword in preparation to unleash an even more powerful attack. However, right at this moment, the surrounding air abruptly tightened, and a series of tall flags appeared, forming a small formation with Han Li at the very center. All of the flags then tremored slightly before releasing countless runes in a frenzy, and Han Li's body suddenly became extremely heavy, as if a series of shackles had bound his body. He looked down to discover that the Taoist priest was currently controlling the three giant badges, attempting to use them to trap him. As for Huang Yuanzi, he had also summoned a crimson crystal ring that was flashing with red light, clearly about to attack Han Li as well. Han Li's expression darkened slightly upon seeing this. The azure longsword in his hand and the Providence golden body disappeared in unison. Immediately thereafter, he transformed into a giant golden ape over 1,000 feet tall amid a flurry of golden runes. He then swept his arms violently through the air, sending a burst of tremendous force surging through the surrounding space. Most of the restriction was destroyed by this burst of power, and the flags that formed the formation began to tremor violently, with some of them even being snapped on the spot. Taoist San Quan's expression changed drastically upon seeing this, but he didn't pause even for a moment as he continued to make a series of hand seals. All of a sudden, a sharp screech rang out, and 3 small snakes emerged amid a burst of spatial fluctuations, then pounced toward Han Li as 3 shadows of different colors. Han Li immediately thrust a hand forward and flicked 3 of his fingers through the air at once in retaliation. 3 dull thumps rang out as 2 of the small snakes were sent flying like cannonballs, but the final crimson snake managed to evade the attack, then bit onto one of Han Li's fingers like lightning. Han Li let loose a low roar as he flipped a hand over to grab onto the small snake, then crushed it with ease with his tremendously powerful grip. However, not only was Taoist Xianxia not disheartened to see this, a cold smile appeared on his face instead. Han Li swept his arms through the air again to destroy the rest of the formation, and the remaining flags were also snapped in half, thereby completely freeing himself. Right at this moment, 5-colored light flashed from the giant door beneath Huang Yuanzi, and the crystal ring in his hand abruptly vanished. In the next instant, 5-colored lights suddenly flashed above Han Li, and a fiery crimson cloud appeared. A giant crystal ring then appeared around his waist, as if by instantaneous teleportation before tightening viciously. At the same time, scorching crimson flames erupted out of the ring in a frenzy to inundate Han Li's entire giant ape body. A hint of elation appeared on Huang Yuanzi's face upon seeing this. The crystal ring didn't seem all that remarkable, but it was actually a profound heavenly holy artifact, refined from a fragment of a profound heavenly treasure he had found in the cave abode of an ancient cultivator. Not only was it able to expand and shrink at his behest, it was extremely resolute, and the flames it was releasing were comprised of several types of spirit flames that would instantly incinerate the average cultivator to ashes upon contact with even just the slightest spark of this flame. He had used the 9 illusion fortune door to instantly trap Han Li within this ring, and even if the ring couldn't kill Han Li on the spot, severe injuries were surely unavoidable, or so he thought. In the next instant, a rumbling boom rang out within the flames, and the crystal ring flashed violently before suddenly exploding into countless fragments, following which the giant golden ape emerged in an expressionless manner, completely unscathed. Huang Yuanzi could barely believe his own eyes upon seeing this. A hint of astonishment also appeared on Taoist Xianxia's face, but a thought then occurred to him, and he turned to Huang Yuanzi with a cold smile. Rest assured, fellow Taoist Huang, this man is indeed extremely powerful, but he's just been bitten by my blood-refined snake and fallen prey to my blood poison. I'll count to 10, and at the end of that, all of the blood in his body would completely congeal, and he would be unable to use any magic power. There's no way he'll be able to do anything then. Is that true, Brother Xianxia? Huang Yuanzi was naturally ecstatic to hear this. I wouldn't lie about something like this. In fact, I'll prove it to you. 1, 2, 3. Taoist Xianxia was extremely confident and began a countdown right away. Han Li's expression remained completely unchanged as he thrust a palm through the air, sending a burst of enormous force crashing down from above. The immortal heavenly lord had only just recovered from his injuries and was in the process of getting up when he was crushed into the ground again. His face turned as red as blood as he let loose a wolf-like howl, and black light flashed violently around his body as he swelled even further in size. At the same time, thick veins bulged all over his body, while a series of white bone spikes began to protrude out of his skin, presenting a very unsettling sight to behold. After completing his transformation, he clenched his hands into giant fists before slamming them viciously onto the ground. The earth tremored violently, and 2 huge black rifts immediately appeared. Using the force of impact, the immortal heavenly lord was able to spring out of the crater before letting loose an enraged roar, then transformed into a gust of black wind that hurtled directly toward Han Li. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, and he thumped his own chest violently with his fists before releasing a ball of golden light out of his body. The ball of light contained none other than the gold-devouring beetle monarch, and as soon as it was released, its eyes abruptly widened, releasing a pair of translucent sword projections that plunged into the gust of black wind in a flash. An agonized howl immediately rang out as blood rained down from the heavens. Chapter 23:23 Battle Outside the Valley 3. The gold-devouring beetle monarch had no intention of holding back and quickly flicked its fingers through the air, unleashing another flurry of sword projections. However, before these sword projections had a chance to plunge into the black wind again, a furious roar rang out as a giant blue blade that was over 1,000 feet in length emerged in retaliation. This was a peculiar blade with a slight curvature that resembled both a saber and a sword, and it was releasing fearsome glacial power. The gold-devouring beetle monarch merely appraised the giant blade with a wooden expression, and the sword projections it had unleashed suddenly fused as one, forming a giant sword projection that was several hundred feet in length at his behest. The two massive blades clashed, and a crisp crack rang out as the giant blue blade was sliced in half down the center. The sword projection was far too powerful for the average treasure to be able to withstand, and without the blue blade acting as impediment, it was able to instantly plunge into the black wind again. A cry of alarm rang out as the gust of black wind surged violently, transforming into a massive tornado, but countless translucent sword projections suddenly appeared within the tornado, quickly slicing it apart. The immortal heavenly lord was then sent flying out of the black wind, and only after stumbling back over 1,000 feet was he able to steady himself. At this moment, he was looking very much worse for wear. Not only was his body riddled with wounds, one of his legs had gone missing. A giant bone shield that was giving off layers of black light had appeared in his hand, but it was also missing a good chunk. The immortal heavenly lord was staring intently at the gold-devouring beetle monarch, and aside from fury and wariness, there was also a hint of fear in his eyes. Even with such severe injuries, the immortal heavenly lord was able to regenerate at an incredible speed, and even his severed leg was quickly taking shape again. The gold-devouring beetle monarch's eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing this, and it pointed a finger toward the immortal heavenly lord from afar. Countless invisible sword projections immediately appeared around the immortal heavenly lord, then rapidly converged toward the center. At the same time, the gold-devouring beetle monarch also began to fly toward its opponent. The immortal heavenly lord let loose a furious roar as he thumped a fist into his own chest. Black light immediately surged over his body, and all of his white bone spikes shot forth as streaks of white light to oppose the oncoming sword projections. At the same time, he hurled his broken shield viciously toward the approaching gold-devouring beetle monarch. The bone shield transformed into a gray wheel of light as it flew through the air, while the immortal heavenly lord abruptly vanished on the spot. In the next instant, he reappeared several thousand feet away amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. A resounding boom rang out as the gold-devouring beetle monarch shattered the oncoming bone shield with its fist, then pounced toward the immortal heavenly lord in the distance with a cold expression. The immortal heavenly lord's heart jolted as he looked down at his own reforming leg, which was only less than half regenerated, and he gritted his teeth as he teleported elsewhere once again. However, the gold-devouring beetle monarch had no intention of allowing him to recover, as it changed directions to continue pursuing its target. Thus, an impasse ensued in the form of a perpetual chase. At this moment, Taoist San Quan finally completed his count of 10, and he was stunned to see that Han Li was still alive and well, appraising him with a cold expression. "Impossible. Even an immortal body wouldn't be able to survive my blood poison. How could you possibly be unscathed?" Taoist San Quan exclaimed in a panicked manner. "You think your paltry blood poison can spell my downfall? What a joke!" Having said that, it was quite impressive that the little snake was able to bite through my skin, Han Li said with a cold smile, then thrust his other palm toward the bitten finger. An inky black line of blood was immediately expelled out of a barely visible fang wound on the fingertip. The blood poison had been instantly forced out of Han Li's body. In reality, with Han Li's current physical constitution, the blood poison would only cause him some slight discomfort even if it were allowed to spread. He had cultivated the chaotic myriad poison body that granted him immunity to all poisons, so this blood poison naturally wasn't going to do anything to him. A hesitant look appeared on Huang Yuanzi's face upon seeing this, and after taking a glance at the immortal heavenly lord, who was being chased around like a wounded dog by the gold-devouring beetle monarch, a fierce look appeared on his face as he suddenly stomped a foot down onto the giant door beneath his feet. The door immediately vanished as a faint trace of light, then abruptly reappeared directly above Han Li. Huang Yuanzi was still standing atop the door, and he wrenched off one of his own arms before detonating it into a cloud of blood mist, which quickly disappeared into the giant door down below. It was quite apparent that he was about to unleash some type of powerful secret technique, and Han Li certainly wasn't going to just stand by and watch. A cold look flashed through his eyes as he threw a devastating punch at the giant door. As soon as he did so, The entire sky dimmed as a burst of invisible spiritual pressure surged toward Huang Yuanzi and the massive door in a frenzy. Right at this moment, Huang Yuanzi let loose a shrill cry, and countless bright red threads erupted out of his skin before vanishing into the giant door as faint crimson shadows. A resounding boom rang out as the space where the giant door was situated rippled like water, and the burst of tremendous spiritual pressure passed directly through that area, only dissipating after sweeping through the air for several thousand feet. So this is an illusion technique, Han Li mused with a hint of surprise in his eyes, but a cold smile then appeared on his face as he made a hand seal, preparing to unleash a secret technique to dispel his illusion. With his spirit eye ability and his enormous spiritual sense, which was comparable to that of a true immortal, unleashing an illusion technique against him was virtually akin to suicide. Letter 1D65B, letter 1D493, letter 1D486, letter 1D65A, letter 1D498, letter 1D486, letter 1D484, letter 1D490, letter 1D4F6. However, right at this moment, Huang Yuanzi's voice rang out from above. I'll concede that I'm no match for you, but how does it benefit you to become involved in this matter? I swore an inner demon vow prior to this trip that I wouldn't leave this place until I killed Qing Yuanzi. If you're willing to leave now, I'm willing to hand over the majority of my belongings as compensation. Otherwise, I'll have to take you down with me. You think you can take me down with you with this measly illusion? Han Li chortled as blue light flashed through his eyes, and he lashed out like lightning, threatening to tear through even the space up ahead with his fingers. A low roar rang out as five-colored light flashed from the spot that his hand was grabbing toward, and a crimson humanoid figure appeared before immediately vanishing in a flash. Han Li withdrew his hand and inspected it to find several strips of yellow fabric and traces of blood on his fingertips. Even though he hadn't managed to successfully grab Huang Yuanzi, he hadn't completely failed either. Han Li's brows furrowed upon seeing this, seemingly slightly surprised by this turn of event. You forced me to do this. Let me show you the true power of the 9 illusion fortune door. Huang Yuanzi's enraged voice rang out from up above, followed by a burst of urgent chanting. All of a sudden, spatial fluctuations erupted before Han Li, and 9 identical white doors abruptly appeared amid a flash of spiritual light. Each door was over 100 feet tall with a translucent appearance, and as soon as they appeared, they began to release countless crimson runes. These runes then transformed into countless thumb-sized gray bead, all of which were riddled with thin crimson threads. Furthermore, they were giving off an aura that was quite threatening even to Han Li. Hierarchical Yin Corpse Lightning. Han Li drew a sharp breath upon identifying these beads, and he immediately made a hand seal, conjuring up countless azure threads that hurtled directly toward these beads. Hierarchical Yin Corpse Lightning was imbued with traces of the power of destruction, and even Han Li didn't dare to face so many of them head-on. However, there was a delay in the detonating of this lightning, and that was enough time for him to slice them apart with his sword threads. Much to Han Li's surprise, the azure threads struck the gray beads, only to pass directly through them as if they were mere illusions. A hint of astonishment appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. He had used his spiritual sense to examine these beads prior to releasing these sword's threads, but he hadn't discovered anything amiss about them. Han Li's mind was racing as the beads continued to fly toward him, and he suddenly reached out to draw one of the gray beads that was several hundred feet away into his own grasp. As soon as the bead came into contact with his hand, his palm began to heat up, and his expression changed drastically upon sensing this. These aren't illusions. The gray bead exploded violently in his hand into a ball of gray light, completely inundating his body in a burst of enormous power. Chapter 23-24, Slaying the Enemies. A loud roar rang out within the gray light, following which 2 giant purplish-golden hands emerged before forcibly tearing the light apart. Han Li then strode out of the gray light while radiating bright purplish-golden light, and aside from some areas of his body that had been charred black, he was completely unscathed. I see, so that wasn't true hierarchical Yin Corpse Lightning. It only possessed around 1/10 of the power. You're delusional if you think something like that can hurt me. Having said that, this illusion technique is quite interesting, Han Li remarked. Huang Yuanzi was silent for a moment, as if he had been stunned by how powerful Han Li's physical body was, but he then said in a vicious voice, HMPH, if 1 isn't enough, then what about 10? What about 100? As soon as his voice trailed off, all of the other beads shot forth toward Han Li like a torrential storm. How foolish! I've already seen through your illusion technique, so countering it will be a simple task." Immediately thereafter, countless runes appeared all over his body, following which several balls of spiritual light emerged. These balls of light then transformed into a series of true spirit projections, which then vanished back into his body in a flash. In the next instant, Han Li's body swelled drastically in size amid a flash of purplish golden light, and a layer of golden scales appeared over his skin, while 4 extra arms and 2 additional heads also emerged with a short straight horn protruding out of each head. Han Li had adopted his third, Nirvana transformation. A fearsome aura that struck one with a sense of asphyxiation immediately erupted from his body, following which the profound heavenly spirit/sword appeared in his grasp amid a flash of green light. With nothing more than a casual wave of the sword, countless bright 5-colored runes instantly surged forth, and a dark green halo erupted out of Han Li's body before sweeping forth in all directions alongside powerful law fluctuations. In the next instant, the dark green halo clashed with the oncoming beads, and all of the beads were quickly reduced to dust amid flashes of crimson light. "That's a profound heavenly treasure," Huang Yuanzi's horrified voice suddenly rang out from up above. "Letter 1D6ATF, letter 1D5FF, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D41E, letter 1D430, letter 1D6AT, letter 1D41C, letter 1D698, letter 1D55E. Right at this moment, a cold smile appeared on Han Li's faces, and an inky black demonic eye appeared on each of his glabellas. The 3 demonic eyes then quickly inspected the 9 white doors before Han Li suddenly lashed out toward one of the doors with his green longsword. A green sword projection was immediately sent hurtling toward that door, and at the same time, he unleashed a string of punches toward the remaining 8 doors with his other fists. Round a dozen head-sized balls of light were sent hurtling through the air before crashing into the remaining 8 doors. A burst of loud rumbling rang out, and the balls of golden light exploded into powerful golden shockwaves that instantly inundated the 8 doors. In the face of this fearsome attack, the 8 doors were shattered without being able to offer any resistance, and 8 humanoid figures suddenly emerged from within the destroyed doors. However, they only managed to struggle for a brief moment before they were also destroyed by the golden shockwaves. Right at this moment, the green sword projection sliced the final door in half down the center, and a yellow humanoid figure shot back in retreat in a panicked manner before vanishing into thin air, then reappeared over 10,000 feet away in a flash. "Help me, Brother San Quan. My clones have been destroyed if you don't assist me now. Arg." The yellow figure was none other than Huang Yuanzi's true body, and his voice was abruptly cut off as a massive purplish golden hand tore through the space above him before crashing down like lightning. Huang Yuanzi immediately tried to flee through instantaneous teleportation, but layers of silver formations suddenly appeared over the purplish golden hand, releasing a burst of tremendous invisible force. The air instantly tightened around Huang Yuanzi, and not only was he suddenly unable to draw upon most of his magic power, he was also completely rooted to the spot, as if the entire space had become his shackles. He was naturally petrified by this turn of events, and he let loose a thunderous roar before rubbing his hands together, then raised them in unison to send countless streaks of yellow light flying upward. At the same time, spiritual light of different colors flashed from his body, and around a dozen treasures of different descriptions also emerged before exploding one after another. It was clear that Huang Yuanzi was making one final desperate bid to save himself. A hint of hesitation appeared on Taoist San Quan's face upon hearing Huang Yuanzi's cry for help. Now that Huang Yuanzi had fallen into such a desperate situation, Taoist San Quan finally made a decision, making a hand seal before fleeing from the valley as a streak of 3-colored light. After just a few flashes, he had vanished into the distance without a trace. Meanwhile, the giant purplish golden palm was able to force its way through the immense power released by the detonated treasures and streaks of yellow light, all of which instantly crumbled away upon coming into contact with Han Li's hand. Huang Yuanzi had even expelled around a dozen mouthfuls of blood essence to unleash several trump card abilities, but all to no avail, and he could only look on as the purplish golden hand continued to descend like an immovable mountain. All of a sudden, a cloud of crimson mist exploded in midair, following which a ball of yellow light escaped from beneath the purplish golden palm before fleeing to several thousand feet away in a flash. Within the ball of yellow light was a miniature yellow-robed figure. It was none other than Huang Yuanzi's nascent soul. Only by ejecting his nascent soul out of his own body could he escape from the spatial seal exerted upon him by Han Li's palm. Of course, at this point, he had already discovered that Taoist San Quan had abandoned him, and he was cursing the Taoist priest internally while making a series of hand seals, preparing to also escape toward the same direction through instantaneous teleportation. A cold look appeared in Han Li's eyes upon seeing this, and he slashed his green longsword through the air again in a nonchalant manner. A green crescent-shaped sword projection swept forth before disappearing into space in a flash. The nascent soul in the distance had only just vanished into thin air when spatial fluctuations erupted nearby, and the crescent sword projection reappeared before also vanishing on the spot. In the next instant, an agonized howl rang out, and a cloud of crimson mist abruptly emerged. Within the cloud of mist were countless chunks of dismembered flesh, but strangely enough, all of them were hovering in midair instead of plummeting out of the sky. A crimson fireball suddenly shot forth from the distance, exploding within the cloud of crimson mist to release a vast expanse of scorching flame that incinerated everything within an area of around an acre into ashes. That's the end of that. That 9 illusion fortune door was rather annoying. I was forced to use even my holy nirvana physique to counter it. It's a pity that Taoist San Quan was able to get away, Han Li murmured to himself as he quickly reverted back to his human form, then cast a cold gaze toward the direction that Taoist San Quan had fled in. He then raised an arm before making a grabbing motion, and a pristine white storage bracelet emerged out of thin air before flying into his grasp in a flash. He quickly inspected the contents of the storage bracelet with his spiritual sense, upon which a pleased look appeared on his face, and he stowed the bracelet away before casting his gaze toward the other battlefield. On the ground near a small mountain several tens of kilometers away, there was a small mountain constructed from countless dismembered limbs and chunks of flesh, while blood was flowing like a river through the area. The gold-devouring beetle monarch was hovering above the mountain of flesh, holding a fist-sized furry head. The head clearly belonged to immortal heavenly lord, but for some reason it had shrunk down significantly. This immortal heavenly lord possessed an immortal body, but that pile of flesh was completely unresponsive, so he had clearly been truly killed by the gold-devouring beetle monarch. "Come here, Jin Tong," Han Li instructed with a smile. The gold-devouring beetle monarch immediately did as it was told, taking a step forward to vanish on the spot, then reappeared beside Han Li amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. "Well done. Beings with immortal bodies are quite formidable, but once you decapitate them, their regenerative abilities will be severely diminished, and you'll be able to kill them easily after you force their nascent soul out of their body. Looks like you figured that out all on your own," Han Li praised as he glanced at the immortal heavenly lord's head. The gold-devouring beetle monarch extended a bow toward Han Li upon hearing this, then suddenly tossed the head over to Han Li alongside a black storage bracelet. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face as he drew the 2 items into his own grasp. However, he only took a brief glance at the head before tossing it away, then opened his mouth to release a thick bolt of golden lightning to reduce the head into nothingness. Chapter 23-25, Request. As for the black storage bracelet, that was also stowed away after he inspected its contents with his spiritual sense. As a safety precaution, go and see if that Taoist San Quan is still lingering nearby. If you meet him, then kill him, Han Li instructed. The gold-devouring beetle monarch nodded in a wooden manner in response, then sped away toward the direction that Taoist San Quan had fled in as a streak of golden light. After that, Han Li released a ball of flames to incinerate the immortal heavenly lord's dismembered body into ashes, then cast his gaze toward the valley. At this moment, the entire valley was still enshrouded under a series of restrictions that were not to be disregarded. The battle that had just taken place was quite a short one, but Yan Li and the others had naturally already detected what was happening. Han Li swept a hand through the air, and countless runes instantly surged forth in a frenzy, transforming into a shimmering azure mirror amid a flash of azure light. Initially, the surface of the mirror was completely blank, but Han Li then cast a golden rune into the mirror, and the image of Yan Li quickly appeared on its surface. Yan Li currently had a slack-jawed look on her face, as if she couldn't believe the outcome of the battle outside the valley. Those were 3 intruders on the same level as Qing Yuanzi, yet Han Li had demolished them with ease, killing 2 while the remaining one had fled for his life. "How are Yuan Yao and your master, fellow Taoist Yan?" Han Li asked in a calm manner. They're both doing well, and they're currently withstanding the last few rounds of the heavenly tribulation. Brother Han, have you already progressed to the grand ascension stage? Yan Li murmured in a bewildered manner as she finally returned to her senses. Of course, how else would I have been able to contend with those enemies? Seeing as fellow Taoist Qing Yuanzi is still transcending his tribulation, I'll wait for him and Yuan Yao here, Han Li replied before sweeping a sleeve through the air, and the azure mirror instantly exploded into a flurry of runes that vanished into thin air. After that, Han Li descended onto a nearby mountain, before taking a seat with his legs crossed on a clean rock. He was on friendly terms with Qing Yuanzi, and the two of them had a mutual connection in the form of Yuan Yao, but they definitely weren't close enough to be able to entrust each other with their lives, which was why Han Li had decided to wait outside the valley until the heavenly tribulation concluded instead of asking Yan Li to allow him into the valley. As soon as he took a seat, he raised a hand to release a voice transmission talisman, which vanished into thin air amid a flash of azure light. Han Li was sending a message to his companions on the Ink Spirit Holy Ark, informing them that they could come and reunite with him now. Shortly thereafter, the mountainous black ark appeared in the distance. Inside the formation, Yan Li was still seated atop that disk treasure, appraising the scenes unfolding on the copper mirror before her with a blank expression of incredulity. 3 days later, an earth-shattering boom rang out within the valley, and the black tribulation clouds dissipated, while a long cry of elation rang out from Qing Yuanzi. Han Li was in the process of meditation, and he opened his eyes with a smile as he said, "Congratulations on successfully transcending your tribulation, fellow Taoist." His voice wasn't very loud, but it echoed throughout this entire space and wasn't drowned out in the slightest by that elated cry. Qing Yuanzi's voice abruptly drew to a halt, following which he replied, "I must thank you for allowing me to transcend this tribulation without being disturbed, fellow Taoist Han. Also, congratulations on reaching the grand ascension stage." It was clear that Qing Yuanzi had been aware of everything taking place outside the valley, even during his tribulation transcendence. "You're far too kind, fellow Taoist. Even if I hadn't stepped in, I'm sure you would have prepared other backup measures that would have kept those scoundrels at bay with ease. You've only just transcended your tribulation, so your top priority should be recovery. I'll keep a lookout here while you rest in case anyone else tries to plot against you," Han Li replied. "Thank you for the kind offer, fellow Taoist. In that case, I'll see you in a few days," Qing Yuanzi agreed after a brief moment of contemplation before falling silent. Having just transcended his heavenly tribulation, he really did need to consume some pills to recover some of his lost energy. Han Li appraised the valley for a while longer, then suddenly turned toward a mountain in the distance with a meaningful smile before withdrawing his gaze and closing his eyes. Almost at the exact same moment, a golden-robed middle-aged wearing a tall crown on his head emerged beneath a giant tree on the mountain that Han Li had just cast his gaze toward. The golden-robed man was none other than one of the other Grand Ascension stage beings in the Infernal River, Golden Flame Baron. He was supposed to have already left the Infernal River, but he had appeared near the location where Qing Yuanzi was transcending his tribulation and concealed himself on that mountain, so he clearly harbored some sinister intentions as well. Golden Flame Baron stared at Han Li from afar with a hesitant expression for a long while, then heaved a faint sigh before departing. After witnessing the incredible power displayed by Han Li and the gold-devouring beetle monarch, he had completely abandoned his original plans. Furthermore, the glance that Han Li aimed at the mountain seemed to have been very casual, but Golden Flame Baron knew that Han Li had already discovered him, so he naturally didn't dare to remain there any longer. Moments later, he was already thousands of kilometers away, flying back toward his own cave abode as a ball of golden light. Who could have imagined that a body integration stage being just several hundred years ago would progress to the Grand Ascension stage so quickly and be capable of slaying other Grand Ascension stage beings with ease? That tiny purplish golden thing is also extremely powerful. I wonder what it is, Golden Flame Baron murmured to himself as he flew through the air. 2 days later, Qing Yuanzi and Han Li were seated in an elegant hall, and the former was proposing a toast to the latter. Qing Yuanzi's face was slightly pale, and his aura was rather unstable, but he was in very good spirits. Yuan Yao and Yan Li were standing behind him, appraising Han Li's companions with curious expressions. During the heavenly tribulation, Yuan Yao had assisted Qing Yuanzi as instructed, but she hadn't suffered any backlash, so she had emerged from the valley completely unscathed. However, she had been just as stunned as Yan Li upon hearing about Han Li's progression to the Grand Ascension stage. Han Li took a glance at Yuan Yao, upon which he recalled the adorable, astonished expression she had displayed, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Truth be told, I always knew that you were destined for great things, but never did I think you would progress to this level so quickly and already be capable of slaying enemies of a similar caliber to myself. It looks like I still underestimated you, Qing Yuanzi said. You're far too kind, fellow Taoist Qing. My aptitude is actually quite ordinary, and I was only able to progress to the Grand Ascension stage so quickly after encountering a miraculous opportunity while venturing into the Elder Devil realm. In contrast, I'm sure your powers have been further enhanced by your tribulation transcendence, so there may be a chance for you to ascend to the true immortal realm someday, Han Li replied with a smile. Qing Yuanzi hurriedly waved a hand in response. Opportunities only come to those who are prepared. At the very least, the average body integration cultivator wouldn't dare to venture into the Elder Devil realm, so this is a testament to your courage and decisiveness. As for myself, I wouldn't dare to think about ascension. I'm just glad to be able to live some more years after transcending this tribulation. You're far younger than myself, yet have already reached such a formidable level of power. There's a very good chance that you'll be able to ascend in the future instead, fellow Taoist Han. Ascension is also something extremely distant to me. Without at least tens of thousands of years of arduous cultivation, there's no chance of ascension for me, Han Li replied in a modest manner. Haha, tens of thousands of years are akin to the mere blink of an eye for beings like us. However, if you really do intend to ascend, then there are some preparations that you should make in advance, Qing Yuanzi said. Han Li's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. Oh, please enlighten me, fellow Taoist Qing. I'm far older than you, so I naturally know some more things. If you want to live until the day you can ascend, then you'll have to start preparing for your major heavenly tribulations in case any mishaps arise. If you don't mind, I'd be willing to give you some of my experiences and insights, Qing Yuanzi replied. Please go ahead, fellow Taoist. Han Li naturally wasn't going to refuse something beneficial like this. Thus, the two of them began to discuss matters surrounding ascension and tribulation transcendence, and the conversation lasted close to half a day before finally drawing to a conclusion. At this moment, Han Li cast his gaze toward Yuan Yao and said, Fellow Taoist Qing, I originally came here just to pay a visit to the three of you, but seeing as you've already transcended your heavenly tribulation, and Yuan Yao and Yan Li have already recovered their human bodies as well, I would like to take them back to the human race. Would you be open to that? Chapter 23-26, Kairong Mountain Rain. Of course, Brother Han. Yar is my foster daughter while Lear is my disciple. If they want to leave, they're free to do so at any time. However, my advice is for them to stay here a bit longer before returning to the human race, Qing Yuanzi replied. Oh, why is that? Han Li was rather taken aback to hear this, and he cast a glance toward Yuan Yao and Yan Li to find that wry smiles had appeared on both of their faces. I'll get Yar to explain it to you so you can hear the information from her first hand. If Yar and Lear are willing to leave now, I definitely won't stop them, Qing Yuanzi said with a serious expression. Brother Han, the two of us really can return to the human race right now. At the very least, we'll have to stay with Father for around 2 to 3 more centuries. As for the reason behind this, examine our bodies and you'll find out, Yuan Yao sighed. A peculiar look appeared on Han Li's face as he released his spiritual sense toward Yuan Yao, upon which his expression immediately changed slightly. I can see that your physical bodies are rather unstable. Is this a lingering aftereffect from your transitions back to human bodies? Indeed, Brother Han. Father refined several types of special pills to return us to our human bodies, but we had been in our previous ghostly forms for too long up to that point. As a result, sustained nourishment from 2 types of spirit medicines that can only be found in the infernal river is required for us to complete the transition. If we were to leave now, all of our prior efforts would go to waste, Yan Li explained. I see. In that case, it looks like it would certainly be unwise for me to take you two with me, Han Li replied with a nod. Rest assured, Brother Han, Yar and Lear have both made significant contributions during my heavenly tribulation, and I was planning to bestow some powerful abilities upon them after my tribulation. As such, they'll definitely benefit enormously from staying by my side for a few more centuries. Perhaps they'll even be able to reach your level in the future, Qing Yuanzi said with a smile. Is it really possible for Senior Marshal Sister and me to reach the Grand Ascension stage, Father? Yuan Yao was ecstatic to hear this, as was Yan Li. Haha, I can't make the same guarantee for anyone else, but you two definitely have a chance. Even setting aside the guidance you'll receive from me, your relationship with fellow Taoist Han is a massive opportunity in itself. With his assistance, your chances of reaching the Grand Ascension stage will be significantly increased. Isn't that right, fellow Taoist Han? Qing Yuanzi said with an amused smile. So I've been factored into your calculations as well, Brother Qing. Of course, if Yuan Yao and Yan Li require my assistance in reaching the Grand Ascension stage, I'd be sure to offer it, Han Li chuckled. Qing Yuanzi stroked his beard as he chortled with glee, while Yuan Yao was appraising Han Li with a special hint of emotions in her eyes, and Yan Li was also ecstatic to hear this. All of a sudden, a thought occurred to Qing Yuanzi, and he asked, "By the way, during my tribulation transcendence, I saw a tiny purplish golden person outside that was wielding several types of formidable sword projections, and it slew the immortal heavenly lord with astonishing ease. That thing's aura was rather familiar to me. Would you be able to tell me what it is?" "Ah, so you witnessed Jin Tong in action. I'm sure you've already guessed what it is, Brother Qing," Han Li replied in an ambiguous manner. Qing Yuanzi did indeed already have an idea of what that purplish golden figure was, but his expression still changed drastically upon hearing this, and he exclaimed, "Could it be that it really is a gold-devouring beetle monarch? There's no mistaking it. Only the gold-devouring beetle monarch could slay a Grand Ascension stage being so easily. Looks like the legends about its powers being comparable to that of true immortals were no exaggeration. How did you manage to nurture such a beetle monarch, fellow Taoist Han?" "I was extremely fortunate to have been able to nurture such a beetle monarch, and it would be next to impossible for me to replicate the process. I have to thank you for your past guidance in this matter. Otherwise, there's no chance that I would have succeeded," Hanley said as he cupped his fist in a grateful salute. "I only gave it a casual mention all those years ago. I didn't think you'd actually be able to succeed. With this beetle monarch by your side, you'll have no worthy foes in this entire spirit realm. Would you be able to summon the beetle monarch so I can take a look at it?" Qing Yuanzi said with a wry smile, making no effort to hide his envy. "Surely you jest, fellow Taoist Qing. The spirit realm is a massive place and is home to countless powerful beings. There's no way I can proclaim dominance with just a beetle monarch by my side. I released the beetle monarch earlier to see if there were any lingering enemies in the area. I'll show it to you once it returns," Han Li replied. "You're far too modest, fellow Taoist Han," Qing Yuanzi chuckled in response. "By the way, do you know of the He Lion Trade Guild, fellow Taoist Qing?" Han Li asked in a seemingly nonchalant manner. Qing Yuanzi's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this. The He Lion Trade Guild, that's a super organization that spans across several continents. I've heard of it, but I don't know too much about it. Do you have some ties with this guild, fellow Taoist Han? "No, but perhaps I'll need to interact with this guild in the near future, so I was hoping to find out some information about them from you," Han Li replied with a faint smile. "No problem. I'll collate all of the information I have on this guild into a jade slip for you," Qing Yuanzi immediately said. Han Li was naturally very pleased to hear this. "You have my thanks." After that, they discussed some topics surrounding tribulation transcendence before Han Li and his companions were arranged places to stay in the cave abode. The next morning, right as Han Li was emerging from his room, he caught sight of a white-robed beauty who resembled a celestial maiden standing outside. As soon as he appeared, Yuan Yao smiled and said, "How about I spend the day with you, Brother Han?" 7 days later, a rumbling boom suddenly rang out in the air above a barren plain in the infernal river. A massive green sword projection swept through the air, slicing a long black rift into the murky gray space. The giant black arc that was hovering beneath the rift immediately flew toward it, vanishing into the spatial rift after just a few flashes. Moments later, the black spatial rift was slowly closed again. Letter 1D453, letter 1D45F, letter 212F, letter 1D626, letter 1D4CC, letter 1D626, letter 1D450, letter 2134, letter 1D4C2. Yuan Yao and Yan Li were standing nearby, watching as the black arc departed. "Let's go, your future Tao companion has already left. All we have to do is wait for about 2 more centuries for our physical bodies to stabilize, and we'll be able to go and reunite with him in the human race. Hee, surely that's not too long for you to wait," Yan Li giggled. "What's this about a future Tao partner? My relationship with Brother Han has always been a pure one. Besides, You're one to talk. I saw you on multiple occasions casting sneaky glances at Brother Han these past few days. It looks like you want to be his future Dao partner instead. Yuan Yao objected as a blush appeared on her face. I did indeed cast a few furtive glances at Brother Han, but I was simply curious about how he was able to progress so quickly in his cultivation despite his ordinary appearance, Yan Li said in a nonchalant manner. HMPH, who knows if that's even true? Then how about I gouge out my own heart for you to see? After you see it, you'll have to take responsibility for me, though. The two giggled with amusement as they continued their playful argument. The Kai Rong mountain range was a renowned spirit region on the Tianyuan continent. The mountain range stretched for millions of kilometers, and among the 10 mountains here, close to half of them were active volcanoes. There were even a few that were constantly releasing lava or black volcanic ash, making most of the mountain range extremely hot and completely devoid of life. However, as a result of this, the Kai Rong mountain range was able to produce large quantities of fire attribute spirit stones and materials, as well as extremely rare extreme yang attribute spirit medicines. Thus, despite its perilous environment with all those active volcanoes, it attracted many outsiders every year. On this day, a group of foreign beings in a diverse range of attire appeared near a small volcano on the outskirts of the mountain range. The volcano had just erupted, and these foreign beings were taking advantage of this period of respite to flock into the nearby pits and craters to search for fire attribute spirit stones and materials. Whenever the volcanoes erupted, it would always release some low-grade materials that would scatter across the nearby area alongside plumes of volcanic ash. The majority of these foreign beings were only at the Qi condensation stage, with only a few at the foundation establishment stage, so they didn't dare to venture any deeper into the mountain range and could only search for low-grade materials on the outskirts. All of a sudden, a four-eared foreign was struck by the feeling that his surroundings had dimmed significantly, and he immediately looked up, upon which his face turned completely pale, and he let loose a cry of alarm. All of the other nearby foreign beings reflexively stopped what they were doing upon hearing this and also looked up. As a result, all of them were rooted to the spot. A giant black arc that was over 10,000 feet in length had appeared completely silently above them, and it was hovering in the sky like a massive island. Countless huge puppet warriors were patrolling the arc, presenting an awe-inspiring sight to behold. All of the foreign beings down below were low-grade cultivators, and they had never seen such a giant flying treasure before. As such, all of them were completely petrified. Chapter 23-27, Black Char Peaks. All of a sudden, a streak of white light shot forth out of the giant arc, stopping directly above a white-haired elderly man. The streak of light contained a young woman who appeared to be no more than 15 or 16 years of age, and she asked in a warm voice, "May I ask if this the Kai Rong mountain range, fellow Taoist?" The elderly man was only at the early foundation establishment stage, but he was already one of the most powerful foreign beings present. The elderly man was completely unable to detect the young woman's cultivation base, and he replied in a fearful manner, "This is indeed the Kai Rong mountain range, senior." The young woman was ecstatic to hear this, and she hurriedly asked, "Looks like we've come to the right place. Would you happen to know where the Black Char Peaks are, fellow Taoist?" The elderly man's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this, and he replied, "You want to go to the Black Char Peaks? That one of the central regions of the Kai Rong mountain range, and it's been made into a restricted area due to how perilous it is." "That sounds about right. You don't need to worry about my safety, fellow Taoist. Just tell me how to get there," the young woman said with a smile. "Yes, senior. If you're going to the Black Char Peaks, then just travel west from here, and you'll see 3 black mountains in a triangular formation close to the center of the mountain range. Those are the Black Char Peaks," the elderly man hurriedly replied. "Thank you. Here are a few spirit stones as a reward." The young woman nodded before tossing a few high-grade spirit stones toward the elderly man, then returned to the giant arc as a ball of white light. Moments later, the black arc continued onward deeper into the mountain range, while the elderly man was appraising the high-grade spirit stones in his hand with an ecstatic expression. High-grade spirit stones weren't all that valuable for high-grade cultivators, but for a foundation establishment cultivator like him, this was an unimaginable wealth. However, his heart then jolted upon sensing the envious looks being directed toward him, and he hurriedly stowed the spirit stones away before quickly departing. Not long after his departure, Several other foreign beings of around the same cultivation base as him also silently left the area. All of the chi condensation stage foreign beings had naturally noticed this, but none of them said anything as they continued to search for fire attribute materials. Han Li was currently standing at the front of the Ink Spirit Holy Ark, peering into the center of the mountain range in the distance with the Blood Soul, and the others standing next to him. It's quite unexpected that the auction of the He Lion Trade Guild would be held somewhere so conspicuous. Having said that, it seems that those low-grade beings had no idea about it, Han Li mused. One would have to at least be at the spatial tempering stage to participate in this auction, so it's no surprise that those foreign beings were unaware that it was taking place. The commencement of the auction should be coming up in the next 1 or 2 months, so I'm sure many powerful beings from many races would have already arrived. Perhaps you'll be able to reap some unexpected rewards during this auction, Senior Han, the Blood Soul replied. I certainly hope so. At my cultivation base, there are very few things that can appeal to me, but if there are other Grand Ascension stage beings willing to bring out some good auction items, then that would be a different story altogether, Han Li replied with a casual nod. Rest assured, Senior, judging from my past experience, there will definitely be no lack of Grand Ascension stage beings attending this auction. Also, aside from participating in the auction, those seniors will most likely also hold a private exchange convention. Even if you don't find anything you want during the auction, I'm sure you'll find something in the private convention, the Blood Soul said with a smile. Han Li's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. A private exchange convention, eh? That sounds like something to look forward to. Around an hour later, the 3 mountains described by the elderly man finally appeared up ahead. The mountains were arranged in a triangular formation and situated amid a pile of reddish-black rocks, and there was a sharp sulfuric scent being spread through the air by gusts of scorching winds. As soon as their black arc reached within 100 kilometers of the 3 mountains, it was immediately stopped in its tracks by a group of foreign guards on giant falcon steeds. All of these guards wore suits of black armor and were armed to the teeth. Their faces were obscured by black visors, and all of them were remarkably tall, far more so than the average adult human. Their giant falcon steeds were also completely black and massive in stature, presenting a very intimidating and majestic sight to behold. It was very clear that the owner of this giant ark and the puppet army patrolling the ark was no ordinary person, and the leader of the guards extended a respectful bow as he said, "You're about to enter a restricted area of our trade guild. I'm afraid we can't grant you passage unless you have a token you can present." "Will this suffice?" the Blood Soul asked as she drifted down from the ark and swept a sleeve through the air, releasing a ball of white light. The leader of the guards drew the ball of light into his grasp before carefully inspecting it to find that it was a white badge with beautiful spirit patterns engraved upon it, as well as a silver guild character emblazoned on its surface. After a brief examination, the guard returned the badge with both hands and said, "Forgive me for failing to recognize you, esteemed guest elder. I'll get someone to guide you right away. Letter 1D557, letter 1D5FF, letter 1D556, letter 1D41, letter 1D430, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D680, letter 1D428, letter 1D696. He displayed no intention to verify the identities of Han Li and the others on the ark. The Blood Soul nodded as she withdrew the badge, then flew back onto the ark. The group of guards then divided themselves into 2 groups, with one group acting as guides for the ark, while the rest continued to patrol the area. Thus, the ark was led toward the 3 Black Mountains. Along the way, they encountered several other groups of patrolling guards, but none of them stopped the ark seeing as it was already being led by a group of their colleagues. The distance of no more than 100 kilometers was covered by the Ink Spirit Holy Ark in just a short while, and just as the ark was about to fly over one of the 3 Black Mountains, a burst of spatial fluctuations suddenly erupted up ahead. Immediately thereafter, a giant white door of light that was close to 10,000 feet tall emerged. There were hundreds of strange buildings of different sizes near the door of light, some of which were round while others were rectangular, and there were many guards on giant falcon steeds entering and exiting these buildings on a regular basis. As soon as the Black Ark approached the area, it naturally attracted a lot of attention. Right at this moment, the giant ark stopped on its own several kilometers away from the door of light. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he swept his spiritual sense through the surrounding area, upon which he immediately sensed a burst of restriction fluctuations, and he quickly understood what was happening. At this moment, the guards that were guiding the ark turned around and stopped beside the ark, then explained, "You'll be able to enter the restricted area through this profound heavenly gate. However, the usage of all flying treasures is prohibited in the restricted area, so I'm afraid you'll have to withdraw this ark before you continue. This is also as far as we'll be able to take you. We can't advance beyond this point without official permission." "All right, you can go now," the Blood Soul instructed. The giant black ark then disintegrated into countless runes that vanished on the spot amid a resounding boom. Thus, Han Li and the others were revealed standing in midair. The guards hurriedly extended respectful salutes toward Han Li and the others, then departed from the area atop their giant falcon steeds, while Han Li led his entourage toward the giant Door of Light. The guards near the Door of Light were all appraising Han Li's group with curious expressions, but the group was granted free passage into the door without any intervention. What? Another Grand Ascension stage fellow Taoist has entered the profound heavenly gate. All right, I'll send someone to welcome them. You keep doing what you're doing," a red-haired elderly man said to the image of a black-armored guard being depicted on the wall before him. The man was situated in a completely sealed-off hall that was completely empty aside from a few futons. There were gems of all types of different colors embedded onto the walls of the hall, and there was a layer of faint azure mist wafting through the air, giving everything in the hall a mysterious appearance. After a brief pause, the elderly man swept a sleeve through the air to release a burst of red light, and the image of the guard on the wall immediately vanished, only to be replaced by the image of a giant black ark, atop which stood a few blurry figures. The elderly man appraised the giant ark through narrowed eyes for a moment before suddenly raising a hand with furrowed brows, sending an incantation seal, vanishing into the stone wall in a flash. The image of the figures on the giant ark rapidly expanded to over 10 times its original size, presenting a much clearer image on the stone wall. Thus, Han Li and the others became visible to the elderly man. The elderly man's gaze quickly swept over the Blood Soul and the others, then settled on Han Li. "Oh, this man is rather familiar. I seem to have seen him somewhere before," the elderly man murmured to himself. Chapter 23-28, Fragrant Maidens. After a brief moment of contemplation, he flipped a hand over to summon a white jade slip amid a flash of white light. He then chanted something while pointing a finger at the jade slip, and a series of extremely lifelike portraits quickly emerged one after another. The elderly man carefully inspected the transitioning portrait with an unblinking gaze, and all of a sudden, the shape-shifting portrait settled on the image of an azure-robed man. It was none other than Han Li. So it really is this new Grand Ascension stage being from the human race. He's far more powerful than the average Grand Ascension stage being. I'm going to have to organize a welcome of the highest standard, the elderly man murmured to himself before clapping his hands together twice. Spatial fluctuations erupted on one side of the hall, and a woman in a purple palatial dress with a thin veil over her face appeared before the elderly man. "Is there something I can do for you, master?" "Fei Yun, this is fellow Taoist Han Li. Make sure to organize a welcome for him of the highest standard that's reserved for the most esteemed guests of our trade guild. You must ensure that he's satisfied with our trade guild at all costs," the elderly man instructed. The woman's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this, and she replied in a respectful manner, "I understand. I'll attend to this man in person and make sure that he has a positive experience." "Good, I have full trust in your abilities. You can go now. That man has already entered the profound heavenly gate. Here's some information about him. Make sure you take a good look at the information so you don't offend him in any way." The elderly man pointed a finger at the jade slip as he spoke, upon which another jade slip appeared in his hand. The second jade slip was tossed toward the woman, who immediately caught it before giving an affirmative reply, then vanished on the spot as if she had been nothing more than an illusion. Following her departure, the elderly man swept a sleeve through the air, and the projection of Han Li instantly vanished. At the same time, spiritual light flashed from the wall, and a middle-aged man in a set of scholarly robes appeared before cupping his fist in a salute toward the elderly man, then said, "Master, the first batch of auction items have already safely arrived in the warehouse." "Good. Those auction items are extremely precious, and there are even a few items among them reserved for the elders of our trade guild, so make sure that nothing happens to them. Also, begin preparing the sentinels for the auction right away, and some restrictions and formations need to be re-examined over 3 times. The elderly man began to rattle off a series of instructions. As soon as Han Li entered the profound heavenly gate, his field of view was filled with a flash of white light, following which he abruptly appeared on a stone platform that was over 100 feet tall. The Blood Souls and the others were standing close behind him, and beneath his feet was a teleportation formation with a diameter of several tens of feet. Han Li inspected his surroundings to find that there were massive trees all around him, forming a watertight barrier around the stone platform, and there was only a winding stone path leading away into the distance. He looked up into the sky to find a gray stone ceiling tens of thousands of feet up ahead, and the stone ceiling stretched as far as the eyes could see with countless stalactites all over its surface, indicating that they were currently situated in an underground world. Every half a kilometer or so, there would be a head-sized source of light embedded onto the stone ceiling, making it appear as if there were countless stars up above giving off gentle white light to illuminate the entire underground world. Han Li quickly swept his spiritual sense through the forest and immediately discovered 7 or 8 other stone platforms identical to the one beneath him, and there seemed to be other people nearby as well. It appeared that there was more than one entrance to the Black Char Peaks than that profound heavenly gate. Just as Han Li was about to spread his spiritual sense even further, it came into contact with something less than 10 kilometers away, upon which his spiritual sense was repelled back. This didn't seem to bother him at all, and a faint smile appeared on his face as he strode down from the platform before walking along the stone path. The Blood Soul and the others naturally followed along closely behind him, while also inspecting their surroundings. After walking for around 2 kilometers, the path suddenly took a turn, upon which Han Li's group arrived at a crossroads. Besides the crossroads was an awning constructed from green branches, within which sat several tens of foreign beings in different attire. The foreign beings were split up into 7 or 8 groups, and they were either conversing with one another or meditating in their seats, seemingly waiting for something. At the center of these foreign beings were 3 children who appeared to be no more than 11 to 12 years of age, with their hair arranged into small braids. The trio wore identical attire, and they were constantly traversing between the tables, occasionally serving up cups of spirit tea or plates of spirit fruits. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing this, but he continued to make his way toward the awning. Many of the foreign beings under the awning turned toward the new arrival, and none of them were unable to glean Han Li's cultivation base with their spiritual sense. Upon discovering this, their expressions changed drastically as they hurriedly withdrew their gaze in a respectful manner. The Blood Soul took a glance at the foreign beings gathered under the awning and said, "This should be the Trade Guild's welcoming area. All of the outsiders wishing to participate in the auction have to wait here until the Trade Guild sends people to fetch them. Otherwise, participation in the auction won't be granted even with a token." "I see, the Helion Trade Guild sure is quite cautious," Han Li replied with a smile. At this point, he had already reached the awning, and he identified that the majority of the foreign beings present were at the spatial tempering stage, while only a few were body integration stage beings. The 3 children hurriedly rushed out before extending respectful bows toward Han Li, yet just as they were about to say something, a burst of beautiful music suddenly rang out from above the awning. Countless white runes emerged up above, then transformed into a giant jade disc. Immediately thereafter, spatial fluctuations erupted from the disc, and a formation appeared on its surface, following which an elegant purple figure emerged. "That's a guidance envoy," someone exclaimed, and everyone's attention was immediately drawn to the jade disc. Atop the jade disc stood a gorgeous woman in a purple palatial dress. Even though her face was concealed behind a thin veil, everyone was still struck by a sense of captivation at the sight of her. As soon as the woman appeared, she cast her gaze downward and instantly caught sight of Han Li. "May I ask if you're Senior Han of the human race? My name is Fei Yun, and I was instructed to take you to the esteemed guest pavilion," the woman said in a respectful voice as she extended a curtsy toward Han Li. Han Li took a glance at the woman, and an intrigued look appeared on his face. "I see. I am indeed here from the human race. Who was it that instructed you to come and fetch me?" "I was instructed to come here by Master Ming Zun, the person overseeing this auction. We have prepared a welcome of the highest standard for your esteemed self," the woman replied. "A welcome of the highest standard? That man really is a Grand Ascension stage being." "He's most likely no ordinary Grand Ascension stage being, either." A stir immediately ran through the other foreign beings upon hearing this. I've heard of fellow Taoist Ming Zun. I didn't think that he was a member of your He Lion Trade Guild. All right, you can lead the way, Han Li said with a nod. Yes, senior, please come with me. The woman stepped away to the side of the jade disc before making an inviting hand gesture. Thus, Han Li and the others all flew onto the jade disc, and the woman made a hand seal, upon which the formation resurfaced on the disc. A burst of spatial fluctuations erupted forth, and the entire group vanished in a flash along with the jade disc. In the next instant, Han Li reappeared in a resplendent hall that was several acres in size, with several identical jade discs situated at its center. We pay our respects to Senior Han. There were 12 other young beauties in palatial dresses waiting in the hall, and they immediately extended respectful bows toward Han Li as soon as he appeared. A hint of surprise flashed through Han Li's eyes at the sight of these young women. All of them appeared to be no more than 16 to 17 years of age, and their physical characteristics clearly indicated that they were from different races. However, all of them were very beautiful and alluring, and they were holding different items in their hands, such as incense burners, scepters, and horsetail whisks. What was most noteworthy to Han Li was that despite how young these women were, they were all at the nascent soul stage. Woman in purple seemed to have sensed Han Li's surprise, and she explained, "These are fragrant maidens nurtured by our trade guild. All of them have regularly consumed the honey of 100 flowers from birth, allowing them to give off a floral fragrance. On top of that, they're all virgins and would make great dual cultivation partners. According to the rules of our trade guild, all esteemed guests of the highest level that come to attend our auction will be gifted a group of these fragrant maidens." She then turned to the fragrant maidens and instructed, "Come here and greet your new master." The 12 young women immediately fell to their knees and said, "We pay our respects to our master." "Fragrant maidens, eh? Your trade guild sure is sparing no expense. In that case, I'll accept this gift. You can all get up now. Or I'll leave them to you for now," Han Li chuckled. Chapter 23-29, Unexpected News. Zhu Guor stepped forward and gave an affirmative response, and the 12 fragrant maidens also stood up obediently before making their way over to her. Aside from those 12 fragrant maidens, our trade guild has prepared several other presents that we hope you'll also accept, Senior Han, the woman in purple said with a smile. She then clapped her hands together, and 3 handsome young foreign beings strode in from outside the hall, each carrying a silver platter with a red cloth draped over it. Han Li cast his gaze over the 3 platters and was able to immediately identify what they were, upon which he quickly waved a hand in refusal. "These fragrant maidens are already an extremely precious present. I can't accept anything else from your guild." The woman in purple faltered slightly upon hearing this, but she then immediately dismissed the 3 young men. "Seeing as those presents aren't to your liking, I naturally won't force you to accept them. I'm sure you must be tired from your journey, Senior. How about I take you to your resting quarters and we'll discuss everything else tomorrow?" "I am indeed in need of some rest. Please lead the way, fellow Taoist," Han Li replied with a nod. Thus, the woman in purple quickly made her way out of the hall, followed closely by Han Li's group. As soon as they exited the hall, they were immediately greeted by the sight of a lively and bustling scene. They had emerged onto a bluestone street that wasn't extremely crowded, but it was still very lively with many beings of different descriptions walking along the street. There were also some shops on either side of the street that were being frequently visited, and those who emerged from the shops all wore different expressions, depending on whether they had found what they wanted in those shops. What was quite surprising to Han Li was that all of the people on the street possessed lofty cultivation bases, and there were even beings at or above the core formation stage among the workers in the shops. Han Li released his spiritual sense further into the distance to find that this wasn't the only street in the area. There were also streets and dense clusters of buildings in all other directions, forming a small town with a radius of less than 100 kilometers. As for the hall behind them, it had disappeared as soon as they had exited it, making it seem as if they had appeared onto the street out of thin air. However, all of the passers-by completely disregarded this, as if it were a common occurrence. "Were these people all invited by your trade guild to attend the auction?" Han Li asked as he withdrew his spiritual sense. "Of course not. Most of the guests that are participating in the auction are resting in the guest pavilions. The majority of the people here are members of our trade guild, and they're taking advantage of this opportunity to seek out some rare items. Even for members of our guild, they have to be of a certain status or cultivation base if they want to participate in the auction," the woman in purple replied with a smile. I see, Han Li nodded in response. Right at this moment, the woman in purple made a hand seal, and a cloud of white mist immediately emerged beneath her feet before carrying the entire group toward the other end of the street. The venue for the auction is just over there. All of the attendees will be invited to that venue prior to the auction's commencement. Aside from the auction items that have already been made public knowledge, there will be several treasures that will be extremely useful even to Grand Ascension stage seniors, so I'm sure you won't be disappointed. The woman in purple introduced while pointing at a certain tall pagoda in the distance. That's the auction venue. It doesn't look very big. Could it be that there's more to the venue than meets the eye? Han Li asked. Your wisdom is truly unmatched, Senior. This pagoda is merely an entrance to the true auction venue, and it was designed this way so that we wouldn't have to worry about anyone harboring sinister motives targeting the auction. The woman in purple replied in a respectful voice. Looks like your trade guild really has expended a lot of effort to make this auction a success. May I ask how many Grand Ascension stage fellow Taoists will be in attendance? Han Li asked. There's still around a month left until the official commencement of the auction, so I can't tell you the exact number of Grand Ascension stage attendees, but over 20 Grand Ascension stage seniors have already arrived, which is a higher number than many of our past auctions, the woman in purple replied. Over 20. It's very impressive that your trade guild was able to attract so many Grand Ascension stage fellow Taoists in such a short time, Han Li praised. You're far too kind, Senior. It's not the merit of our trade guild that has attracted so many seniors. Instead, all of these seniors are willing to travel all the way here as they know that they'll be able to reap some rewards during our auction. The woman in purple replied with a smile. Hee, it sounds like you're very confident in this auction. By the way, I've heard that spots for intercontinental teleportation will be available for sale. Is that still available? Han Li asked. The woman was rather taken aback by this question, but she still replied truthfully. The intercontinental teleportation spots are one of the special auction items, and they're always in high demand every edition of the auction, so they naturally won't be canceled for no good reason. However, there's currently an issue with the super teleportation formation leading to the Thunder Continent, so those spots have been canceled, and more spots have been provided for teleportation to the Blood Sky Continent. The spots to the Thunder Continent have been canceled. Han Li's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. That's right. Could it be that you were planning to travel to the Thunder Continent, Senior? It doesn't have to be the Thunder Continent. I was planning to make a trip to the Blood Sky Continent sooner or later anyway. However, it looks like I'll have to make some changes to my original plans, Han Li replied with a calm expression. Zhu Guor and the others were also quite surprised to hear this, and they were all displaying different reactions. A short while later, the cloud carried Han Li's group to the edge of the town, then descended into a lush forest. The forest was filled with extremely pure spiritual qi, and there were only several intricately crafted clusters of buildings situated there. There was a distance of several kilometers between each cluster of buildings, and they were all separated by lush greenery to ensure privacy, while also presenting some beautiful scenery to behold. The woman in purple led Han Li's group to one of the clusters, and 7 or 8 servants immediately emerged from inside before falling to their knees in front of Han Li and the others. This is one of our esteemed guest pavilion areas. These are the servants here. You can keep them here if you'd like. Otherwise, if you think they'll only get in your way, then you can immediately dismiss them as well, the woman in purple said with a smile. With the fragrant maidens that were just gifted to me, I'll have no need for these servants, so they can go for now, Han Li replied. The woman in purple immediately gave an affirmative response before dismissing the servants, and they all departed after extending respectful bows. Feel free to take a rest here, Senior Han. I'll send someone to notify you when the auction is about to begin. By the way, if you have some spare time, you can explore the town. Perhaps you'll reap some unexpected rewards. I'll be taking my leave now, the woman in purple said. Thank you, fellow Taoist. I'll be sure to do so. Han Li displayed no intention to keep the woman, and she rose up into the air again before quickly departing from the forest. Let's go. The trade guild is clearly trying to appease us, so there's no need for us to be too reserved, Han Li said before making his way toward the pavilion, followed closely by the Blood Soul and the others. A short while later, all of them appeared in the hall on the first floor of the pavilion, and Han Li was situated on the main seat with everyone else standing respectfully beside him. As for the 12 fragrant maidens, they had already been assigned tasks by Zhu Guor. Senior Han, are you really planning to go to the Blood Sky continent first? The Blood Soul asked with a hint of anticipation intermingled with hesitation in her eyes. That's right, unless you have some other way through which we can go to the Thunder continent first, Han Li replied. Surely you jest, Senior. If I had another way, I would have already revealed it, the Blood Soul said with a wry smile. In that case, let's go to the Blood Sky continent first. We'll just have to find a way to get to the Thunder continent from the Blood Sky continent. I've never been to the Blood Sky continent, but I've heard many tales about it. Aside from the vastly renowned blood Dao devilish arts on that continent, there are also several mysterious inheritances that are apparently able to kill enemies without being detected even from tens of thousands of kilometers away. I'm sure you must have come into contact with some of these things, fellow Taoist blood soul, Han Li said as a serious look appeared on his face. Chapter 2330, Bai Ying. I stayed on the Blood Sky continent for quite some time, so I do indeed have some knowledge on it. Blood Dao devilish arts are the most common cultivation arts on the Blood Sky continent. Almost 4 or 5 out of every 10 cultivators on that continent are using cultivation arts of this nature. The Blood Dao sects on the continent are also extremely powerful and can be referred to as the supreme powers on the continent. As for the mysterious inheritances you mentioned, they do exist, and many people have cultivated them in secret. However, these cultivators are sworn enemies of the Blood Dao sects, and most of them are extremely secretive, so they're extremely hard to encounter. I once encountered a mysterious cultivator who claimed that he had cultivated witchcraft, and he had a few wooden puppets that were able to easily destroy many powerful enemies of his, the Blood Soul replied. Witchcraft, eh? This type of inheritance has appeared on several occasions on our Tian Yuan continent in ancient times, but they seem to have been immediately destroyed in unified efforts by the powerful beings on the continent at the time. I didn't think that such inheritances would still exist on the Blood Sky continent. It looks like we'll have to be careful during our trip. By the way, which power did you make enemies out of during your time on the Blood Sky continent? Han Li asked. That would be the Blood Bone sect, one of the major Blood Dao sects. However, I'm only at the spatial tempering stage, and the enemy that I made was only one of the elders of the Blood Bone sect. So many years have already passed, perhaps they've already given up on me. Even in the worst-case scenario, I can just alter my appearance slightly, and that should avoid any unnecessary trouble, the Blood Soul replied. There's no need for you to alter your appearance. The Blood Sky continent isn't as vast as the 2 continents, but it'll still be very difficult for you to encounter your enemies. Even if you do, I'll take care of them for you, Han Li said in a nonchalant manner. Letter 1D68F, letter 1D5FF, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D4, 1E, letter 1D430, letter 1D68T, letter 1D41C, letter 1D698, letter 1D55E. The Blood Soul was ecstatic to hear this. I'll be thanking you in advance then, Senior. Just as the Blood Soul was communicating with Han Li, the woman in purple was also delivering a report to the red-haired elderly man by the name of Ming Zun. So he accepted the fragrant maidens, but refused all of the other presents, the elderly man confirmed. That's right, the woman in purple replied. Interesting. It seems that it won't be that easy to appease him, but he's not entirely refusing our guild either. Fei Yun, if fellow Taoist Han makes any requests to you, then do your best to fulfill them. There's no need to report back to me any further, the elderly man said with a faint smile. Master Ming Zun, may I ask why we're trying to recruit this senior? Even if he's more powerful than the average Grand Ascension stage being, there's never been any other Grand Ascension stage guest that has received this level of treatment. Fei Yun was rather perplexed. If he's an ordinary Grand Ascension stage being, then there's naturally no need for all of this, but have you seen the information regarding his exploits? Ming Zun asked with a smile. I did, but the information is very undetailed. All it mentions is that he progressed to the Grand Ascension stage in an extraordinarily short time, and that he had entered the Elder Devil realm before, Fei Yun replied in a respectful manner. That's because fellow Taoist Han rose up so quickly that our trade guild still hasn't even had enough time to collect many pieces of important information about him. All you need to know is that if a ranking for the 10 most powerful beings of the spirit realm is created, he'll most likely take up one of those spots, Ming Zun explained with a serious expression. What, is he really that powerful? Fei Yun was truly stunned to hear this. HMPH, why else do you think I would do all this to try and appease him? Ming Zun harumphed with a roll of his eyes. The woman's heart jolted upon hearing this, and she hurriedly lowered her head in a submissive manner. Ming Zun didn't say anything further, and merely waved a hand to dismiss her. After that, he hesitated momentarily before sweeping a sleeve through the air to release a burst of vibrant light that instantly vanished into the stone wall beside him. A loud buzzing sound immediately rang out, following which an indistinct figure was manifested within a cloud of white mist. The figure turned to Ming Zun, and a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes as he asked, "Ming Zun, aren't you preparing for the auction over on the Tian Yuan continent? Why have you suddenly contacted me?" "Bai Ying, if I recall correctly, you're still in need of powerful allies for the plan that you're about to carry out, right?" Ming Zun asked. "Why do you ask? Could it be that you've changed your mind and are willing to come and help me?" The indistinct figure asked in a cold voice. "Of course not. It's not like you don't know about the vow I swore to never set foot on the Blood Sky continent again," Ming Zun replied. "In that case, why are you suddenly asking about this?" A hint of impatience had crept into the blurry figure's voice. "I can't help you, but I've found someone who should be able to assist you," Ming Zun explained in an unhurried manner. The indistinct figure's voice cooled even further upon hearing this. "Are you saying you've revealed our plan to someone else?" "Of course not. This is an extremely important matter. I wouldn't reveal it to anyone without your agreement," Ming Zun replied. The tone of the indistinct figure's voice mellowed out slightly as he said, "Good. Who is this person that you're referring to? As I'm sure you're already aware, the average Grand Ascension stage being won't be of much help to me, and if too many people are made aware of what we're doing, the secret could quickly spread." "Hee, why don't you take a look for yourself?" Ming Zun chuckled as he made a hand seal before pointing a finger forward, and a ball of light emerged from his fingertip before transforming into a humanoid projection of none other than Han Li. "Who's that? I don't recall ever seeing someone like him before. Is he a new Grand Ascension stage being of your continent?" The indistinct figure asked in a befuddled voice. "That's right, fellow Taoist Han has only recently become a Grand Ascension stage being, but he possesses unfathomable power and will definitely be an extremely useful ally," Ming Zun replied. "Oh, it's rare to see you give someone such high praise. This man really must be quite powerful. Why is it that I've never heard of someone of this caliber? Has he done anything noteworthy in the past?" The indistinct figure asked. "There aren't many notable exploits of his, but there's one that's enough to make him known throughout the entire spirit realm. Have you heard about the recent death of the Stembora Queen in the Elder Devil realm?" Ming Zun asked. "Of course I am. The matter about the Stembora Queen was a huge crisis, and even some of my fellow Taoists from the Blood Sky continent ventured into the Elder Devil realm for it. I heard that the Stembora Queen was slain by one of the patriarchs of the Elder Devil realm, Bao Hua, as well as some other people. Could it be that he was one of the people involved?" The indistinct figure immediately developed a rough idea of who Han Li was. "That's right. From what I heard, this fellow Taoist Han is the person who truly killed the Stembora Queen, while Bao Hua and the others only played minor roles," Ming Zun replied. The indistinct figure's heart jolted upon hearing this. "Is that so? In that case, wouldn't this fellow Taoist be among a handful of the most powerful beings in the entire spirit realm?" I can't confirm whether he's actually that formidable, but he definitely possesses unfathomable power. I've already been made aware that he's attending this auction for an intercontinental teleportation spot, so he should be going to your Blood Sky continent soon. I'm only providing you with this information. It'll be up to you to recruit him," Ming Zun chuckled. "All right, if this works out, then I'll owe you a favor. If that's all, then let's end our communication here. Intercontinental communication requires far too much spiritual power expenditure." The indistinct figure made a hand seal as he spoke, and the image on the stone wall immediately disintegrated into specks of spiritual light amid a dull thump. Ming Zun was unbothered by this, and a faint smile appeared on his face as he closed his eyes to rest. One day passed by after another, and the date for the auction's commencement drew closer and closer. During this time, Han Li hadn't set foot once outside of the pavilion, whereas the Blood Soul and the others frequently visited all of the shops in the town, purchasing many materials and treasures that were very rare in the outside world. Those items naturally weren't enough to catch Han Li's attention, and he displayed no intention to visit the shops in the town, choosing instead to meditate and await the commencement of the auction. On this day, Han Li was in the process of meditating when he finally received a transmission talisman from the woman in purple. A faint smile appeared on his face as he rose to his feet before departing from the secret chamber. Chapter 2331, Hu Yushuang. Han Li transmitted his voice to the Blood Soul and the others as he was exiting the secret chamber, and by the time he emerged from the front gate, they were already waiting respectfully for him. Han Li instructed Patriarch Xianxia and the 12 fragrant maidens to stay behind, taking only the Blood Soul and Zhu Gyur with him as they flew toward the center of the town. Shortly thereafter, other people also began to emerge from the nearby clusters of buildings, as well as the other guest pavilions elsewhere in the town, and all of them converged toward the same place. By the time Han Li arrived above the pagoda, many people had already entered the building. Han Li took a glance at the armored guards standing outside the pagoda, then descended in front of the entrance with the Blood Soul and Zhu Gyur. Right at this moment, Fei Yun emerged from within the pagoda in an elegant manner, then extended a curtsy toward Han Li. "Welcome to our auction, Senior Han. If you don't mind, please allow me to guide you into the venue." She seemed to have been waiting here in advance. Han Li wasn't surprised by this at all, and he nodded with a faint smile in response. "Please lead the way, Fairy Fei Yun." Fei Yun immediately waved a hand toward the guards, and Han Li's group was granted entry into the pagoda without any examination required. As soon as he strode into the pagoda, Han Li immediately detected a burst of peculiar energy fluctuations, and the surrounding scenery quickly faded. It seemed that he had only taken one step, but he had appeared directly in front of the staircase on the first floor of the pagoda. There were two pale-skinned foreign beings on the staircase ahead of him, and they completely vanished into thin air amid a flash of light, leaving only traces of residual spatial fluctuations in their wake. "So this is the true entrance to the auction venue?" Han Li asked. "That's right, this staircase will take you directly into the space where the auction is being held," Fei Yun replied with a smile. Han Li nodded in response, then stepped onto the staircase, upon which he and the others immediately began to warp amid a burst of spatial power. A short while later, Han Li and the others were situated in an elegant booth that was over 100 feet in size. There was a near-transparent light barrier directly up ahead, and through it, a giant plaza was visible down below. Round the plaza were countless people in stone chairs, while around 50 to 60 silver stone cabins were hovering just over 100 feet in the air over the edge of the plaza. Each stone cabin had golden runes all over their surfaces, and it was impossible for those outside to glean what the people in the cabins were up to. Han Li was situated in one of these cabins, with Fei Yun standing beside him with a smile on her face. This setup didn't appear to be any different from that of a normal auction, but Han Li currently had his gaze fixed on something over 10,000 feet in the air above the plaza. This was a five-colored cloud with countless black-armored guards hidden within it, releasing all types of restriction fluctuations that spread across the entire sky and encompassed the entire platform. Even higher above the five-colored cloud was a resplendent palace that was rather blurry and unclear, and strains of heavenly music could be heard from the palace, striking one with a sense of relaxation. In addition to holding the auction in this separate space, I can see that many precautionary measures have been prepared. Your trade guild sure is well prepared, Han Li suddenly said with a smile. Letter 1D453, letter 1D45F, letter 1D452, letter 1D626, letter 1D4CC, letter 1D452, letter 1D4B8, letter 1D630, letter 1D45A. The treasures that'll appear during this auction are far more valuable than those of the previous auctions, so these precautionary measures are very much necessary. There are even 2 or 3 items that can delay one's great heavenly tribulation, so we have to be careful in case some people are harboring sinister motives, Fei Yun replied. No one would dare to try anything once they witness everything that's been set up in here, Han Li said with a meaningful smile. I certainly hope so. The auction is about to begin, and I still have some things that I need to do, so I'll be taking my leave now, Senior Han, Fei Yuan said with a smile as she cast her gaze toward the plaza outside the light barrier. Go ahead, there's no need to keep me company, Han Li replied with a casual wave of his hand. Thus, Fei Yun extended a parting bow before departing from the stone cabin, leaving only Han Li's trio in the room. It's no wonder the He Lion Trade Guild is taking so many precautionary measures when there are tribulation delaying treasures among the auction items, the Blood Soul said. Indeed, those are the only treasures that'll tempt Grand Ascension stage beings into taking nefarious actions, Han Li replied. Aren't you interested in treasures like this, Senior? Even if you have no need for such treasures now, they'll most likely still be very useful to you in the future, the Blood Soul couldn't help but ask. I'll worry about those matters when the time comes. Even if I want a treasure like this, I won't search for it during this auction. There are several tens of other Grand Ascension stage beings present. If I try to take the treasure by force, it most likely won't end well for me. As such, I'll focus my attention on our main target, which are the intercontinental teleportation spots. Han Li replied with a smile, seemingly truly uninterested in those tribulation-delaying treasures. Meanwhile, Zhu Guor was looking at all of the foreign beings outside the light barrier, with an excited look on her face. Around an hour later, the entire plaza was finally filled with tens of thousands of foreign beings at or above the spatial tempering stage. Right at this moment, a rumbling boom rang out at the center of the empty plaza, and a stone platform began to rise up from its surface. Immediately thereafter, a light formation appeared on the plaza, following which Ming Zun emerged. He wasn't particularly tall or imposing, but in the instant that he arrived, a heavy aura instantly settled over the entire auction venue. Some of the chatting foreign beings immediately fell silent and cast their eyes toward the stone platform. I am Ming Zun, the manager of the He Lion Trade Guild on this continent. I'm sure I don't require much introduction, so I'm not going to bore all of you with one. The rules of this auction are similar to those of other auctions, and all those who break the rules will be made to leave by me. All right, with that out of the way, I hereby announce the commencement of this auction. The commencement of the auction was declared in a concise manner, immediately following which Ming Zun rose up into the air as a streak of silver light, vanishing into the five-colored cloud up above after just a few flashes. At the same time, a gorgeous, voluptuous woman with a smile on her face appeared on the stone platform amid a flash of spiritual light. The woman had a pair of large, watery eyes that were filled with boundless seduction, and the mere sight of her gaze was making the blood of the foreign beings close to the platform boil in their veins. What was quite noteworthy was that the woman had 3 furry pink tails that were swishing gently from side to side, adding further to her seductive appeal. That's a 3-tailed charming fox. I didn't think such a being actually existed in our spirit realm. I wonder where the He Lion Trade Guild found her from. The plaza immediately erupted into chatter once again, and many of the male foreign beings present were staring intently at the 3-tailed woman with undisguised lust in their eyes. The woman was completely unfazed by this, and she said in a mellow voice, I am Hu Yuxuang, and I was entrusted by Senior Ming with the duty of hosting this auction. Rest assured, I've hosted many similar auctions in the past, so I'll be sure to do a good job here. You've hosted many auctions. How could that possibly be true? If someone like you had appeared during other auctions, we would have definitely heard of you already. An accusatory voice suddenly rang out, and many other people also became rather suspicious upon hearing this. If you're referring to this continent alone, then this is indeed the first time I've hosted an auction here, Hu Yuxuang replied in an unflustered manner. Does that mean you're not from this continent? Someone exclaimed. I've always resided on the Blood Sky continent, and only arrived on the Tian Yuan continent around a year ago, which is why none of you have seen or heard of me, Hu Yuxuang explained. It's a pity that you're not from our Tian Yuan continent, Fairy Hu. If I had known that someone as stunning as you existed, I wouldn't have refrained from taking a Dao companion for so long. A coarse male voice with a joking tone suddenly rang out in a certain corner of the plaza. What a coincidence. My last Dao companion passed away recently, so I wouldn't be opposed to giving you an opportunity. Who was the one that had just said that? How about you show yourself and repeat those words to my face? Hu Yuxuang giggled, and a hint of light flashed through her eyes as she spoke, upon which her seductive aura instantly became 3 to 4 times more potent. A clean-shaven, middle-aged man that was seated not far away from the platform rose to his feet in a slightly slack-jawed manner and a rather unnatural flush on his face, then declared loudly, Fine, I'll satisfy your request. If I had known that someone as stunning as you existed, I wouldn't have. Chapter 2332, Golden Marrow. All of a sudden, his voice drew to an abrupt halt as he returned to his senses, and his face turned deathly pale as an astonished look appeared in his eyes. Ah, so it's fellow Taoist Cha of the Stone Pupa race. I'm honored to have caught your eye. How about you stay with me for a few days after the auction? Perhaps we'll be a match made in heaven. Hu Yuxuang giggled in a seductive manner, but a cold look had appeared in her eyes. The middle-aged man forced a smile onto his face and said, I was only joking, Fairy Hu. I wouldn't dare to harbor such impure intentions toward you. He then hurriedly sat back down, as if he were fleeing from a deadly scorpion. So that was only a joke. In that case, I'd advise you to be careful with your words. I'll let things slide on this occasion, but if anyone tries to make similar jokes, then I won't be so forgiving." Huang Yushuang's smile abruptly faded as she spoke, and her seductive aura turned into an extremely cold and forbidding one. The middle-aged man's expression darkened further upon hearing this, but he didn't dare to say anything in response. All of the other people on the plaza were quite alarmed by what they had just witnessed, and they didn't dare to appraise Hu Yushuang in the same brazen manner anymore. "That's enough time-wasting, little girl. I didn't come here to watch you put on a show. Hurry up and bring out the auction items." A displeased elderly voice suddenly rang out from one of the silver stone cabins. Hu Yushuang's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this, and she hurriedly extended an apologetic bow. "Please forgive me, Senior. I'll present the first auction item right away." She then quickly made a hand seal before pointing a finger in a certain direction, and a white jade table immediately emerged from a light formation beneath the stone platform. Sitting on the table were 3 wooden boxes of different sizes, each of which was enshrouded under a white light barrier. This first auction item isn't something that can be found on the Tian Yuan continent. It's a small vial of golden lightning lion bone marrow that the Trade Guild only managed to obtain from the Thunder continent after expending extensive efforts. Hu Yushuang pointed a finger at one of the light barriers as she spoke, and the wooden box within that light barrier was immediately drawn into her grasp. Golden lightning lion marrow. Is it real? Even those of us who have never been to the Thunder continent have heard of golden lightning lions. To think that this is only the first auction item, this auction really is different from past editions. Another stir ran through the entire hall as many people immediately directed their attention toward the small wooden box. Hu Yushuang gently laid a hand down onto the box's lid with a seductive smile, and the lid immediately sprang off on its own, revealing a palm-sized purple vial with a faint silver talisman adhered to its surface. The golden lightning lion is one of the 3 sacred beasts of the Thunder continent, and mature specimens possess powers comparable to Grand Ascension stage beings. Even from birth, they possess innate lightning manipulation abilities, and the lightning marrow pills refined from its bone marrow can grant the consumer's physical body with a certain level of lightning resistance for a period of time. However, lightning marrow pills are very difficult to refine, and there's no guarantee that even this entire vial of golden lion marrow will ensure successful refinement. However, I'm sure I don't need to elaborate on how valuable such a pill would be to someone about to face a tribulation, Hu Yushuang introduced before pointing a finger at the small vial, releasing several specks of golden light that transformed into golden runes before vanishing into the silver talisman in a flash. A dull thump rang out as the silver talisman sprang up from the small vial. As soon as it did so, arcs of purple lightning erupted out of the small vial, forming a lightning net and drawing many gasps of amazement from all of the foreign beings present, some of whom were staring at the vial with intense yearning in their eyes. Even though the golden lightning lion marrow hadn't yet been revealed, the phenomenon that was already on display indicated that the rumors that it could be refined into pills that could help one resist lightning tribulations were most likely true. Many of the attendees with other targets immediately changed their minds upon seeing this, and even some of the Grand Ascension stage beings in the silver cabins were quite tempted. "I didn't think that such a precious item would be the first auction item. Aren't you interested in the marrow for its lightning-resistant properties, Senior Han?" the Blood Soul asked. Lightning marrow pills can indeed increase physical resistance against lightning tribulations, but the enhancement is essentially negligible for Grand Ascension stage beings. On top of that, I'm different from normal Grand Ascension stage beings in that my physical body can already rival that of even true spirit beings, so the enhancement will be virtually non-existent to me, Han Li replied, seemingly completely uninterested. A hint of elation appeared on the Blood Soul's face upon hearing this, and she said, "If lightning marrow pills have such limited efficacy for Grand Ascension stage beings, then perhaps I have a chance." "Oh, are you interested in this item?" Han Li asked. "I don't know where my true body is, but she's definitely not in a good situation. Not only is it quite possible that her cultivation base has remained stagnant for all these years, she wouldn't have been able to gather any treasures in preparation for her heavenly tribulation, either. As such, I'll have to work harder to prepare some in her stead," the Blood Soul replied with a wry smile. "If you're interested in this item, then go ahead and buy it. If you don't have enough spirit stones, I can lend you some," Han Li encouraged. "Thank you, Senior." The Blood Soul was ecstatic to hear this. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face as he cast his gaze toward the center of the plaza again. At this point, Hu Yuxuang had already grabbed onto the small vial and was tipping it upside down. A drop of shimmering golden liquid flowed out of the vial, and as soon as it came into contact with the air, it transformed into a head-sized ball of golden lightning that was rumbling incessantly. The doubts of all of the skeptics in the hall were completely erased upon seeing this, and they began to consider how many spirit stones would be required to purchase the marrow. Hu Yuxuang quickly inspected everyone's reactions, then smiled as she gently shook the vial, upon which it released a burst of silver light that drew the ball of golden lightning back into the vial. The starting price for this vial of golden lightning lion marrow will be 10 million, and the purchase can only be made with top-grade spirit stones. The bidding begins now. As soon as her voice trailed off, Hu Yuxuang swept a sleeve through the air, and 5 pillars of light erupted upward from the light formation in unison, forming a giant light screen that was around an acre in size. The screen was as smooth as a mirror, and the image of a small purple vial was depicted on its surface. 20 million. The first bid instantly doubled the starting price, and many people were quite stunned to hear this. The number 10 million suddenly appeared beside the small purple vial projection on the light screen, and it immediately increased to 20 million. 21 million. 23 million. A string of bids quickly rang out across the entire plaza. The number on the screen quickly increased with each bid, and in the blink of an eye, it had already exceeded 30 million. This was an astronomical price, considering it was only for a pill refinement material that wasn't even guaranteed to be able to refine the corresponding pill. All of the auction attendees were quite wealthy, but they were beginning to consider whether they should give up on the item. 35 million. A lazy male voice rang out, and the number being displayed on the light screen suddenly turned a crimson-golden color. That bid had been made by a grand ascension stage, being in one of the silver cabins. Many of the foreign beings' expressions changed slightly upon hearing this. They were only at the body integration stage or spatial tempering stage, and they didn't have the courage to compete with a grand ascension stage being. 36 million. Only after a long while did someone in the plaza finally dare to make another uneasy bid. 37 million. That bid was made by another grand ascension stage being. On this occasion, no one dared to compete any further, and the entire plaza fell silent. You seem intent on securing this item, so I'll leave it to you, fellow Taoist. The first grand ascension stage being to have made a bid had a very gentle voice, and it wasn't apparent from this voice whether it was a male or female. Thank you, fellow Taoist, the second grand ascension stage being replied. However, right at this moment, a bid of 38 million was made from a third silver cabin. Not only was everyone in the plaza quite surprised to hear this, even the bidder in the first silver cabin faltered momentarily before following up with a bid of 40 million. 41 million. In the third silver cabin, the blood soul was holding a round disc while swiping her fingers through the air over it with a serious expression. Meanwhile, Han Li was appraising her with a smile as he sat in his chair. 42 million. This golden lightning lion marrow is extremely useful for a junior of mine. If you're willing to hand it over to me, I'll be sure to present you with some compensation, the other bidding grand ascension stage said. Chapter 23:33. The Four Elders of the Trade Guild. It was clear that this grand ascension stage being was unaware that he was competing with a mere spatial tempering stage junior in the bidding. The blood soul's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, and she cast a hesitant gaze toward Han Li. Han Li's expression remained unchanged as he said, "Rest assured, this is an auction, so the highest bidder wins. If you really need this item, you can secure it without any qualms." "Thank you, Senior. Your words are greatly reassuring to me," the blood soul said in a grateful manner. She then tapped the round disc a few more times before calling out a price of 45 million. The price was raised by 3 million in a single bid, and many of the auction attendees' hearts jolted upon hearing this. The other grand ascension stage bidder had also fallen silent, and after 3 calls of confirmation from Hu Yuxuang, the new owner of the golden lightning lion marrow was announced. The blood soul was naturally ecstatic, and shortly thereafter, a servant of the trade guild was sent to deliver the item to her, upon which she promptly issued the required spirit stones. "I didn't think you were this wealthy, Sister Blood Spirit. You pulled out such a large sum of spirit stones without even batting an eyelid," Zhu Gyur said, with a hint of envy in her eyes following the servant's departure. At her age and cultivation base, she naturally didn't have anywhere near this number of spirit stones. These spirit stones were accumulated over a span of many years by my true body. I didn't think that something as rare as golden lightning lion marrow would appear from the get-go. Otherwise, I would have definitely waited a bit longer. Now that I've purchased this item, I won't be able to purchase anything else during this auction. The blood soul sighed before stowing the small vial away amid a flash of spiritual light. I think you made a wise decision, Sister Blood Spirit. There will definitely be more precious auction items than this golden lightning lion marrow, but the price will definitely be far higher as well. I'm sure many of the attendees were also quite hesitant as the auction has only just begun. Otherwise, the price for this item would have most likely been bid up even further, Zhu Gyur said with a smile. It's a good thing that Senior Han is here with me. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have dared to bid against a Grand Ascension stage being. Even if that Grand Ascension stage being hadn't attended this auction, other people most likely wouldn't be willing to let this marrow slip through their grasp so easily, either, the Blood Soul said as she cast a grateful glance toward Han Li. I had thought that you would need to borrow some spirit stones from me, but it's naturally a good thing that you were able to afford this item on your own, Han Li replied with a faint smile, then cast his gaze toward the center of the plaza again. Even Han Li had been rather surprised that something as rare as golden lightning lion marrow had been presented as the first auction item, and he was beginning to look forward to the rest of the auction items. On the stone platform, Hu Yuxuang had already drawn the second, slightly longer wooden box into her grasp, and as soon as she opened the box, a loud dragon's roar immediately rang out. A streak of azure light shot out of the box, then transformed into an azure worm that was over 100 feet in length in a flash before rising up into the air, as if it were attempting to escape. HMPH, get back down there. A cold harumph rang out from within the five-colored cloud up above, following which several bursts of golden light erupted out of the nearby clouds before striking the azure worm with unerring accuracy. The worm let loose an anguished cry before shuddering as it plummeted out of the midair. At this moment, Hu Yuxuang chanted something before pointing a finger toward the azure worm, and the light around its body faded, upon which it reverted back into an azure sword before slowly descending toward her. Hu Yuxuang drew the sword into her own grasp before rubbing it gently between her hands, and the azure light shimmering on its surface immediately subsided, as did the dragon's roar. Faint blue light flashed through Han Li's eyes, and he was immediately able to identify the sword to be quite antiquated in design, and was no more than a foot in length. What was quite interesting was that hilt took up half of the entire sword's length, thus resulting in a very short blade. The blade of the sword was riddled with scale-shaped spirit patterns, while the hilt had been crafted in the form of an azure worm's head with a crescent-shaped crystal locked within its mouth. This azure worm crescent sword is one of the 3 spirit swords owned by Old Man Crescent, who was an extremely renowned figure on the Tian Yuan continent 100,000 years ago. During the sword's refinement process, it was soaked in the blood essence of over 10 powerful azure worms, and once it took shape, Old Man Crescent worked for several centuries to guide and inject the essential power of the moon into the sword, so its spiritual nature and power are both of an extremely high standard. Those who are interested can come and examine the sword for yourselves, Hu Yuxuang introduced with a smile. Following her introduction, there really were some people on the plaza who stood up and strode onto the stone platform, one after another, to examine the sword. These people all displayed different reactions, and close to 30 people had made their way onto the platform in succession in a short time. After the final person had departed, Hu Yuxuang raised the sword high above up into the air with both hands, and declared, "The base price for this azure worm crescent sword will be 7 million spirit stones, also to be issued in top-grade spirit stones. Let the bidding begin." Letter 1D68F, letter 1D563, letter 1D556, letter 1D680, letter 1D680, letter 1D680, letter 1D554, letter 1D428, letter 1D55E. The base price of this item was lower than that of the golden lightning lion marrow, but in comparison, there were clearly more people interested in it. As soon as Hu Yuxuang's voice trailed off, a bid of 7,500,000 was made. 8 million. 9 million. An image of the sword had already appeared on the light screen, and the number beside it was changing extremely quickly due to the frequency of the bids. However, once the price reached 26 million, the bidding abruptly stopped. It was clear that all of the attendees were of the opinion that it was no longer worth bidding up the price further. As for the Grand Ascension stage beings in the silver cabins, they had no interest in treasures of this caliber, so none of them had even bothered to place a bid. Thus, the Azure Worm Crescent Sword was sold for 26 million. Hu Yuxuang then opened the third wooden box to reveal a fist-sized piece of crimson ore. This was a piece of blood astral iron that was produced only on the Blood Sky continent. It was a material required for refining some special treasures, so it was quickly purchased at a price of 17 million. Thus, the auction commenced on a good note. One auction item after another was presented and sold by Hu Yuxuang, but there weren't many items that caught the attention of the Grand Ascension stage beings in the flying cabins. In fact, close to 100 auction items had already been presented, but only a few had been purchased by Grand Ascension stage attendees. Han Li naturally had no interest in those items either, and he didn't make so much as a single bid. The Blood Soul was quite tempted by a few of those auction items, but she could only give up on them after hearing their prices. Having already spent the majority of her wealth, she was essentially relegated to being just a spectator for the rest of the auction. The He Lion Trade Guild seemed to have predicted that these items wouldn't be enough to tempt the Grand Ascension stage attendees, so once the auction progressed to the halfway mark, 5 or 6 items that were even more precious than the Golden Lightning Lion Marrow were presented. These items were all related to resisting or delaying heavenly tribulations, and the Grand Ascension stage beings in the flying cabins finally began to display some interest. As a result, all of the items were sold for well over 100 million spirit stones. There was even a special material required to refine a tribulation resistance treasure that was sold for the astronomical sum of 400 million. The body integration and spatial tempering stage beings on the plaza were finally made aware of just how incredibly wealthy these Grand Ascension stage old monsters were. Han Li had also displayed some interest in that special material, but he had given up on the bidding after the price had exceeded 200 million. Those auction items had finally drawn some interest from the Grand Ascension stage attendees, and even though the auction items that came after were of a clearly lower standard, many of them were still purchased by those Grand Ascension stage beings. Time slowly passed by, and after the auction had been progressing for almost an entire day, it was finally nearing its conclusion. Thankfully, all of the people present were high-grade cultivators. Not only were they not tired, all of them were paying extra attention to the auction items to come. All of you have been kept waiting a long time for this, so I waste too much time with words. Next, I'll be presenting the top 3 auction items. I'm sure they'll satisfy everyone, Hu Yuxuang said with a mysterious smile, then gently clapped her hands together. A burst of rumbling rang out from up above, and the 5-colored clouds suddenly parted to reveal a shimmering golden palace. Heavenly music then began to play within the palace, and 3 stunning beauties in 5-colored palatial dresses emerged, each of which was holding a silver platter that was enshrouded under a golden light barrier. Following the 3 women came 4 elderly men in different attire, all of whom were Grand Ascension stage beings. Once the 7 of them landed on the stone platform, Hu Yuxuang immediately extended a respectful bow toward the 4 elderly men. Hu Yuxuang pays her respects to the 4 elders. I had intended to pay you a visit as soon as I arrived on the Tian Yuan continent, but you were all in seclusion at the same time. Please forgive me for my transgression. You're the direct lineal descendant of Old Man Hu, right? As expected, you really do possess exceptional aptitude. Don't worry about those formalities. We've never taken such trivial matters to heart. The 4 of us have been cultivating an ability together recently, and if Ming Zun hadn't strongly requested that we appear to ensure the safety of the most important auction items, we'd most likely still be in seclusion right now. A thin, elderly man in a coarse cloth garment replied with a smile. Chapter 2334, Heaven Turning Flag. The final 3 auction items are truly extremely precious. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have dared to suggest to Master Ming to invite you out of seclusion, Hu Yuxuang replied in a respectful manner. It's all right, a short delay like this won't hamper our cultivation. There's no need to attend to us any further. Go ahead and continue the auction, the thin elderly said with a smile, while the other 3 stood beside him in silence. Please wait for me for a moment, esteemed elders. I'll conclude the auction as soon as possible, Hu Yuxuang said before waving a hand toward the 3 women, and they immediately made their way to around 10 feet away from her before stopping again. Meanwhile, the 4 elders made their way over to the 4 corners of the stone platform in a flash before taking a seat with their legs crossed. All of the auction attendees were quite stunned that the He-Lion Trade Guild had brought in 4 Grand Ascension stage beings to oversee the final part of this auction. It seemed that the final 3 auction items were indeed extremely precious. At this moment, Hu Yuxuang made a hand seal, and the light barrier above one of the silver platters abruptly vanished, revealing a small gray flag. The flag was only around half a foot in length and was completely dull and devoid of luster. Aside from a few yellow spirit patterns etched on its surface, it was completely unremarkable. However, there were 7 or 8 faint silver talismans plastered all over the flag's surface, yet it was still giving off peculiar energy fluctuation that was blurring the surrounding space. I'm sure you've all heard of the chaotic myriad spirit roll. The roll is a list of all of the most powerful treasures in this realm. Perhaps some of you are in possession of some of the spirit treasures ranked lower down on the roll. However, I'm sure not many of you have witnessed the profound heavenly treasures at the top of the roll, Hu Yuxuang said with a seductive smile as she cast her gaze across the plaza. Are you implying that there are profound heavenly treasures among the final 3 auction items? A body integration state being couldn't help but ask. That's right. The item that I'm holding right now is a profound heavenly treasures. It's the heaven-turning flag, which is ranked 9th on the chaotic myriad spirit roll, Hu Yuxuang declared as she raised the small flag in her hand. What? That's the heaven-turning flag? How is that possible? That profound heavenly treasure disappeared countless years ago. At the time, 7 or 8 major races on the Tian Yuan continent were severely damaged in a battle over this treasure, and 2 smaller races were wiped out altogether. I never thought this treasure would appear again. Excited chatter immediately rang out across the entire plaza, and even the Grand Ascension stage beings in the silver cabins were quite stunned to hear this. I've also heard of the heaven-turning flag, but never did I think it would appear in an auction like this. As expected of a superpower like the He-Lion Trade Guild, Han Li mused with a hint of surprise in his eyes. As for the Blood Soul and Zhu Guor, their eyes were already wide with incredulity. May I ask if that really is the profound heavenly treasure on the chaotic myriad spirit roll? If that really were the case, wouldn't your trade guild have hidden it away? Surely there's no way you would auction off such a precious treasure. The Grand Ascension stage being who had bid for the Golden Lightning Lion Marrow interrogated in a cold voice. You're correct, Senior. If this really were the very same treasure on the chaotic myriad spirit roll, then there's no way our trade guild would dare to bring it out in such a blatant manner. Setting everything else aside, if several true spirit beings were to come after the treasure, our guild would be in immense trouble. However, I wasn't lying when I said that this was the heaven-turning flag on the chaotic myriad spirit roll, Hu Yuxuang replied with a slight bow. Oh, it sounds like this is quite an interesting treasure. Go ahead and elaborate on what you mean. Another Grand Ascension stage being prompted. Yes, Senior, I'll provide an explanation right away. Most of you have heard of the heaven-turning flag, so I'm sure you know that it only appeared for a very brief period of time in history. However, I'm sure that not many of you are aware that this flag actually split up into 2, a yin flag and a yang flag. The flag I'm holding now is the yin flag, and if this treasure were to be used on its own, it would be comparable to a normal divine spirit treasure in power. Only when both flags are united can it unleash the full power of a profound heavenly treasure. Otherwise, our guild wouldn't be selling it in this auction, Hu Yuxuang explained. The heaven-turning flag split up into 2. This revelation naturally sent another stir running throughout the venue, and many of the attendees were enlightened upon hearing this. I see, so this is only half of the heaven-turning flag. However, all profound heavenly treasures possess immense spiritual nature. Now that the yin flag has appeared, the corresponding yang flag should have emerged as well. Would your guild happen to have any information about the yang flag? Another Grand Ascension stage being asked. Everyone immediately turned to Hu Yuxuang to hear her answer. It was clear that this was something that all of them had wanted to ask. If our guild were aware of the yang flag's whereabouts, we would have already obtained it rather than being forced to sell this yin flag independently. Even this yin flag was something that our guild had unintentionally come across. As for the yang flag, I'm afraid we have no information on it at all. All right, I've said everything there is to be said about this treasure. I'll be displaying some of its power now. Even though it doesn't possess the might of a profound heavenly treasure, I'm sure this demonstration will be sufficient for all of you to verify its authenticity. Hu Yuxuang replied before grabbing onto the flag and waving it through the air. A loud buzzing sound immediately rang out from the small flag, following which bursts of yellow light were released, transforming into countless small yellow flowers that instantly inundated the entire stone platform. In the next instant, Hu Yuxuang began to chant an incantation, and all of the yellow flowers began to revolve around her. All of the world's origin chi in this entire space shuddered before surging toward the stone platform in a frenzy, then disappeared into the yellow flowers. All of the yellow flowers began to radiate bright spiritual light, while expanding drastically in size, before beginning to drift and spread over the sky above the entire plaza. In the blink of an eye, the air above the plaza had transformed into a world of giant yellow flowers. The foreign beings down below swept their spiritual sense up toward the yellow flowers, upon which their expressions immediately changed slightly. All of them could sense the fearsome power imbued within the giant yellow flowers, and what was even more alarming was that these flowers seemed to be extremely internally unstable, as if they could explode at any moment. However, right at this moment, a cold harumph rang out from one of the flying cabins. "There's no need to continue this demonstration. Do you think we can't tell if this is a profound heavenly treasure or not? Hurry up and begin the auction." As soon as the voice trailed off, a gust of fierce azure wind swept out of the silver cabin, eradicating most of the giant yellow flowers above the plaza in the blink of an eye. "Yes, Senior, I'll begin right away." Hu Yuxuang's heart jolted upon seeing this, and she hurriedly waved the flag through the air again, releasing a burst of energy fluctuations that withdrew the rest of the yellow flowers. "The base price of the heaven-turning flag's yin flag is 300 million spirit stones. Let the bidding begin. If you don't have enough spirit stones, trading in treasures for discounts is permitted," Hu Yuxuang declared as the small flag in her hand returned to its original dull and lusterless appearance. 500 million. As soon as her voice trailed off, the Grand Ascension stage being who had spoken earlier immediately made a bid. All of the body integration and spatial tempering stage beings on the plaza were rendered speechless upon hearing this. 500 million spirit stones was far beyond what they could afford. It seemed that the final auction items would all be taken by the Grand Ascension stage beings, as had been the case during all of the past auctions. Letter 1D4F, letter 1D4FB, letter 1D486, letter 1D658, letter 1D498, letter 1D4E, letter 1D4FF, letter 1D658, letter 1D4F8, letter 1D662. However, the spirit realm had always been a place where power reigned supreme. They couldn't compare with those Grand Ascension stage beings in power or wealth, so they naturally didn't dare to display any dissatisfaction. "You're dreaming if you think you can purchase a profound heavenly treasure for just 500 million spirit stones. I'll take it for 800 million. A female Grand Ascension stage being in another flying cabin chuckled. "HMPH, the complete heaven-turning treasure would be a priceless treasure that couldn't be bought no matter how many spirit stones you have. But it's only half a flag that's comparable to a divine spirit treasure in power. The price I gave was already quite high. If you think this is worth more than that, then you can have it," the first Grand Ascension stage bidder harumphed coldly. All of the other flying cabins remained silent, and no further bids were made. Perhaps they had been swayed by the words of that Grand Ascension stage being, or they were concerned about something else. The second bidder paid no heed to this as she said to Hu Yuxuang, "Junior Hu, no one else is making any bids, so shouldn't you declare me as the new owner of this treasure?" Hu Yuxuang's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this, and she forced a fawning smile onto her own face as she replied, "Yes, Senior, I'll begin the count of 3 right away, if no one." However, before she had a chance to finish her sentence, a bid of 900 million was suddenly made. Both the Blood Soul and Zhu Gyur turned to Han Li with surprised expressions, as he was the one who had made the bid. 950 million. 1 billion. 1,300 million. The entire plaza fell silent once again. Chapter 2335, Page of the Golden Jade Tome. I didn't think that there would be so many fellow Taoists competing for merely half a profound heavenly treasure. Are all of you confident that you'll be able to find the Yang flag? Aren't you afraid that this flag will bring disaster instead of fortune upon your respective races?" A coarse female voice chuckled coldly. "In that case, why are you bidding for this item as well, Fairy Gu? Just leave it to us," a sharp voice replied in an unyielding manner. "Does your stone elf race have what it takes to claim this profound heavenly treasure? Aren't you afraid it'll spell the downfall of your entire race?" The coarse female voice scoffed in a disdainful manner. "The stone elf race may not be powerful enough, but what do you think of our mayfly race, Fairy Gu?" A cold elderly voice rang out from another flying cabin. "The mayfly race? most of the Grand Ascension stage beings, expressions changed drastically upon hearing this. The Mayfly race may be one of the most powerful races on the Tian Yuan continent, but our Sky Call race isn't to be looked down on, either. Perhaps I'd be willing to let you take this auction item if it were something else, but there's no way I'm giving up on this profound heavenly treasure, the coarse female voice replied in an emotionless manner after a brief pause. Seeing as no one is willing to give up, let's see who can make the highest bid. This is the auction of the He-Lion Trade Guild, so wealth will be the deciding factor. I currently hold the highest bid. If no one else is going to exceed it, then I'll be taking this flag, the Mayfly being chuckled. 1,500,000,000. The woman from the Sky Call race made another astonishing bid. You even have 1,500,000,000 spirit stones in your possession, fellow Taoist Gu. Don't tell me you've already traded in some treasures, the Mayfly being said in a cold voice. So what if I have? I didn't bring that many spirit stones, but I brought along a lot of redundant treasures, and I'm putting them to good use now, the Sky Call being chuckled coldly. In that case, I'll get involved as well. 1,800,000,000. The Grand Ascension Stay, being from the Stone Elf race, also spoke up again. 1,850,000,000. 1,900,000,000. At this point, all of the other Grand Ascension stage beings had backed out of the bidding. Some of the wealthier ones among them could still afford to make more bids, but they wouldn't be able to keep this treasure anyway, so they could only reluctantly give up on it. Thus, only 3 Grand Ascension stage beings were still in the running. Hu Yuxuang was standing on the stone platform with a pleased smile, awaiting the final outcome. Senior Han, don't you want that heaven-turning flag anymore? The Blood Soul couldn't help but ask. Han Li had only made one bid before falling silent, and that was rather surprising to both the Blood Soul and Zhu Guo. This is quite an alluring treasure, but it may not be a good thing for me to secure it. After all, an incomplete profound heavenly treasure wouldn't be able to immediately bolster the power of our human race, and it'll attract a lot of attention from those major races. Our human and demon races still don't possess sufficient power to hold on to such a treasure, so it would be unwise to try and obtain it, Han Li replied in a nonchalant manner. Indeed, this treasure really was something that wasn't entirely necessary to him. You're right, this is a treasure that's vastly renowned, but its power belies its reputation, so it's more trouble than it's worth. It's a pity that this isn't the complete heaven-touring flag. Otherwise, you could consider securing it, the Blood Soul said in a rather forlorn manner. If this were a complete profound heavenly treasure, I'd be able to summon an ancient true spirit being to protect our human race. As a result, our human race would become a mid-grade power, and we'd be able to expand both our population and the territory under our control without any qualms. In that case, I wouldn't mind taking the risk, but as things currently are, it's simply not worth it, Han Li elaborated. The Blood Soul and Zhu Guo became a lot less interested in the bidding now that they knew that Han Li wouldn't be getting involved. In the end, the Yin flag was taken by the Mayfly being for the astronomical price of 25 billion spirit stones. The other Grand Ascension stage beings were extremely envious, but they could only watch as a Grand Ascension stage elder of the Trade Guild carried the flag to the flying cabin that the Mayfly being was situated in. After a full 15 minutes had passed, the elder finally re-emerged from the cabin with a pleased expression. It was clear that even though the Mayfly being had managed to secure this treasure, he had traded in most of his own treasures and could only give up on the final 2 items. Furthermore, the journey back to the Mayfly race most likely wasn't going to be a peaceful one for him, so he would have to be extra careful. At this moment, Hu Yuxuang removed the restriction over another silver platter to reveal a palm-sized jade box, which she carried gently with one hand. Everyone immediately directed their attention toward the jade box, awaiting her introduction. Hu Yuxuang took a glance at everyone's expectant expressions, then introduced with a smile, "I'm sure many of you have heard of the Immortal Tome, the Golden Jade Tome. The next auction item is a complete page from the Golden Jade Tome. Our trade guild guarantees that this is one of the 36 original inner pages, not a replica copy, and the immortal cultivation art recorded on the page is definitely viable for cultivation. As for its name and effect, we'll be withholding that information. It'll be up to you to decide whether you'd like to purchase it or not." Following her introduction, Hu Yuxuang laid a hand onto the jade box, and a thick pillar of light immediately erupted forth amid a rumbling boom, within which contained a shimmering golden page. There were countless golden runes inscribed onto the surface of the page, and just a quick glance at a single one of those runes struck one with a sense of awe and veneration. This was the golden seal text of the true immortal realm. It really is one of the inner pages of the Golden Jade tome. I didn't think the Lion Trade Guild would be able to obtain something like this. I've heard that the Golden Jade tome contains true immortal cultivation arts and secret techniques. Never did I think that I would get to witness an actual page from the tome. This auction item created less of a stir than that heaven-turning flag, but there were clearly more people interested in it. Why aren't you disclosing the name of the secret technique recorded on that page? There must be some type of fallacy or restriction in its cultivation, right? Otherwise, why would you intentionally withhold this information? The sky call being from before asked. The excitement on everyone's faces immediately faded slightly upon hearing this. Please forgive me, Senior. We are withholding the name of this cultivation art as a gesture of consideration toward its eventual new owner. After all, I'm sure its new owner wouldn't want everyone to know what's recorded on this page. As for fallacies and restrictions, the only one is that it takes longer to cultivate than normal cultivation arts, Hu Yuxuang replied without any hesitation. Given your trade guild's reputation, I'll trust your words to be true, the sky call being chuckled before falling silent. A few more questions were asked before Hu Yuxuang declared a base price of 100 million spirit stones. 150 million. 170 million. 200 million. Even before the Grand Ascension stage beings had made any bids, a flurry of bids had already been made by the attendees on the plaza. HMPH, you're all dreaming if you think you can secure an inner page of the Golden Jade tome for such a paltry price. I'll take it for 300,000,000. A Grand Ascension stage being finally made a bid. What a coincidence. I'm also very interested in this inner page. I'll make a bid of 600 million. If anyone can make a higher bid, then you can have the item. However, Junior Hu just said that this secret technique will be extremely time-consuming to cultivate, so I'm assuming we'll most likely only be able to study and reference it. In that case, is it really worth such a huge sum of spirit stones? The stone elf being from before said. The other Grand Ascension stage beings who were interested in this inner page became rather hesitant upon hearing this. This price was indeed quite high for a cultivation art that may not even be practically feasible for cultivation. In that case, I'll make a bid of 610 million. The one who had made this bid was Han Li, and both the Blood Soul and Zhu Guor turned to him with surprised expressions. HMPH, I'll stick by my word and hand the item over to you then, fellow Taoist. The stone elf being was clearly rather displeased, but he still backed out of the bidding as he promised. Thank you, fellow Taoist, Han Li replied in an unhurried manner. All right, the current top bid stands at 610 million. I'll begin a count of 3, and if no further bids are made, then this inner page will go to that senior, Hu Yuxuang announced with an elated smile. An inner page of the Golden Jade tome was indeed extremely precious, but the projected price was only 300 million to 400 million, so this was very much a pleasant surprise. On this occasion, no one competed with Han Li, and the inner page was delivered to him by an elder of the Trade Guild. Han Li issued the required spirit stones before immediately stowing the inner page into his storage bracelet, without even taking a look at it first. He then sat back down to await the final auction items. According to past convention, the final auction item was supposed to be the most valuable one, and this was one of the reasons why the other Grand Ascension stage beings had decided to give up on the inner page in the end. After all, no one wanted to let the final auction item slip through their fingers due to insufficient spirit stones. Hu Yuxuang took a deep breath before making her way over to the final platter-holding woman, then swept a finger toward the light barrier above the platter, upon which a small gash slowly opened up on the barrier. Chapter 2336, Ancestral Dragon Blood. A fragrant aroma immediately surged out of the gash in a frenzy, permeating to every single corner of the plaza in the blink of an eye. Upon inhaling this scent, everyone was struck by a sense of comfort and reinvigoration. The final auction item seems to be a spirit medicine. The same thought sprang into everyone's minds, and they immediately focused their attention on the platform. In contrast with treasures and cultivation arts, spirit medicines were universally useful, and this spirit medicine had been reserved for last, so it had to be something truly incredible. Hu Yuxuang's reached into the gash with a slender hand before pulling out a palm-sized silver bowl, which was the source of the fragrant aroma. I'm sure many of you must be very curious about what's in here. Without further ado, let me show you our final auction item, Hu Yuxuang said with a smile before tossing the bowl forward, and it hovered in midair in front of her as she cast a string of incantation seals toward it. Dazzling spiritual light erupted out of the bowl, and it suddenly became transparent in appearance, thereby revealing its contents. The bowl contained some type of clear liquid, within which a shimmering golden five-clawed dragon was swimming around. The golden dragon was only several inches long, but every single claw, scale, and detail on its body was clearly visible. It was completely identical to a legendary true spirit heavenly dragon. That's the descendant of a heavenly dragon. Have you all gone insane? You captured the descendant of a heavenly dragon for your auction. If the true spirit's dragon race were to descend upon our spirit realm over this matter, the Tian Yuan continent, no, the entire spirit realm would be doomed. This is no laughing matter. I recall hearing about direct descendants of heavenly dragons being stolen in other realms before. All of the smaller realms were completely destroyed by the dragon race, while the larger ones were severely ravaged by the revenge of the dragons. After a brief moment of stunned silence, the entire plaza erupted into a frenzy, and many attendees sprang to their feet while appraising the miniature golden dragon in the bowl with horrified expressions. The Grand Ascension stage beings in the flying cabins were also stunned to see this, but for some reason, they all remained silent. The situation was beginning to spiral out of control, and Hu Yuxuang's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this. Right at this moment, one of the trade guild elders seated at a corner of the stone platform suddenly opened his eyes. Silence. His voice wasn't very loud, but it was somehow clearly audible to everyone present, and all those who heard his voice felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads, thereby instantly calming them down. Only then did they recall that they were still in the trade guild's territory, with several Grand Ascension stage beings overseeing the situation. All of the attendees immediately sat back down with sheepish expressions, and the commotion quickly died down. What's going on here, fellow Taoist Jia? I'm sure your trade guild wouldn't do something as foolish as abducting the descendant of a heavenly dragon. How do you explain that golden dragon? Don't tell me it has nothing to do with heavenly dragons. We can all clearly sense the true dragon aura that it's releasing, the female Grand Ascension stage being from the Sky Call race said. That's right, this is an extremely important matter, and your trade guild owes us all an explanation. Another Grand Ascension stage being chimed in. Hu Yuxuang's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, and she was just about to say something when the thin trade guild elder held up a hand to stop her. What do we need to explain? Take a closer look at that so-called heavenly dragon descendant, and you'll know what's going on. After that, the elder closed his eyes and offered no further explanation. Thus, all of the attendees in the venue turned their attention toward the miniature golden dragon in the bowl again, inspecting it with both their eyes and their spiritual sense. Han Li's eyes also narrowed slightly, as a hint of blue light flashed within his pupils. A hint of surprise then appeared on his face, as he identified exactly what the golden dragon was. Aside from Han Li, there were also several other Grand Ascension stage beings with spirit eyes abilities and other secret techniques that allowed them to glean the nature of the golden dragons, and several cries of surprise rang out almost in unison. This golden dragon is formed by a spirit item. This is incredible. How could it possibly possess such a strong true dragon aura? Tusk, I've also identified it to be a manifestation of a spirit item, but I can't tell what its true body is supposed to be. Has anyone figured that out yet? Indeed, a spirit item that can manifest a heavenly dragon definitely be an extraordinary item. Spirited discussion immediately ensued between the flying cabins. I think I've managed to identify something, but I'm not sure if that's its true form, Han Li said as he stroked his own chin in a contemplative manner. Go ahead and tell us what you've seen, fellow Taoist, a Grand Ascension stage being urged. Even though Han Li had secured the inner page of the Golden Jade tome earlier, he still hadn't revealed the race that he belonged to. However, he was now proclaiming to have identified the true form of the golden dragon in the bowl, something that no other Grand Ascension stage being present had been able to achieve, and that naturally attracted a lot of attention. If I'm not mistaken, that golden dragon's true form is a drop of spirit blood, Han Li said. What, a drop of spirit blood? But that's impossible. How could a drop of spirit blood take on the form of a heavenly dragon? Could it be that this is a drop of heavenly dragon true blood? It can't be. I've seen heavenly dragon true blood in the past, and it definitely wasn't like this. Han Li's words immediately triggered another round of spirited discussion. As for the foreign beings on the plaza down below, they were also conversing among themselves with perplexed expressions. A hint of surprise flashed through Hu Yuxuang's eyes upon hearing Han Li's verdict, and her change in expression naturally didn't escape Han Li's notice. A faint smile appeared on his face as he said, "Why are we all playing this guessing game when we could just ask fellow Taoist Hu to tell us the answer?" That's true, this auction item is being presented by the Trade Guild, so they must know what it is. Fellow Taoist Hu, stop wasting time and explain to us what this final auction item is. I wouldn't dare to waste everyone's time. It's just that I wasn't even given a chance to explain, Hu Yuxuang said with a wry smile as she put on a pitiable expression. Hee, now that I think about it, we were indeed a bit too impatient. You can go ahead and talk now. Yes, Senior. The Senior from before is correct. The true form of this heavenly dragon is indeed just a drop of spirit blood, Hu Yuxuang said as bright white light suddenly erupted from her hand, following which she placed her palm down onto the bowl before her. The liquid within the bowl was shaken slightly, and the fragrant aroma it was giving off immediately became around twice as potent. At the same time, the miniature golden dragon curled up into a ball before forming a drop of golden liquid. The drop of liquid was slowly revolving on the spot while giving off a metallic sheen, presenting a mysterious sight to behold. Could it be that this really is a drop of heavenly dragon true blood? Someone asked. Of course not. Our He Lion Trade Guild has auctioned heavenly dragon true blood in the past, and this is clearly different, Hu Yuxuang replied. Then what exactly is this? I don't know. All we know is that this is a drop of blood essence, but it's different from the blood essence of all other known powerful beings. Actually, let me rephrase that. None of the powerful beings that we know of can even begin to compare with the owner of this drop of blood essence, Hu Yuxuang said. Does that include even true spirit heavenly dragons? Someone asked in a stunned voice. Of course it does. Truth be told, we've conducted a series of thorough examinations on this drop of spirit blood, and setting aside everything else, the energy contained within this drop of blood essence is over 100 types more potent than what should be found in a drop of heavenly dragon true blood of the same mass. I'm sure all of you are aware of what that entails, Hu Yuxuang said with a serious expression. Over 100 times more potent. That's impossible. Are you saying the owner of this spirit blood is over 100 times more powerful than a heavenly dragon? Someone immediately exclaimed upon hearing this. Even if that isn't the case, it's definitely not far from the truth, Hu Yuxuang replied. Something that's over 100 times more powerful than a heavenly dragon definitely isn't a living being from our realm. Could it be a powerful existence from a higher realm? The Sky Call being asked in an astonished voice. She was naturally referring to the true immortal realm. So this is a drop of blood from a true immortal. But that doesn't explain the heavenly dragon aura that it's releasing, another grand ascension stage mused. Have you all forgotten that true dragons exist in the true immortal realm as well? Hu Yuxuang asked. Are you referring to the ancestral dragons of the true immortal realm? Could it be that this is a drop of ancestral dragon blood? Someone else exclaimed. We can't verify this, but the appraisal masters of our guild are indeed of this opinion, and this is also one of the reasons why our guild doesn't dare to keep the item and has decided to auction it instead, Hu Yuxuang explained. Chapter 2337, Treasure Heist. You said that's only one reason. What about the other ones? The Mayfly Race Grand Ascension stage being asked. The other reason is that even though this drop of spirit blood is clearly an extraordinary item, our trade guild still hasn't been able to find a good way to use it. All we know is that water that the blood has been soaked in for some time can become spirit liquid that can regenerate magic power. But there's no way to extract the fearsome power contained within the blood essence, nor can we find any way to refine it, Hu Yuxuang explained. This spirit blood can't be refined, a grand ascension stage being exclaimed. This ancestral dragon blood definitely has many extraordinary uses. If it can be easily refined, then our guild wouldn't be putting it up for auction. However, many of the fellow Taoists present are extremely powerful beings, so just because our guild is unable to accomplish something doesn't mean that the same applies for all of you. If you can truly refine this spirit blood, perhaps it wouldn't even be impossible for you to directly ascend to the true immortal realm. Of course, if you don't have confidence in your ability to find a refinement method, then it would be best not to participate in the bidding, Hu Yuxuang replied. Even if this is ancestral dragon blood, the fact that it contains such fearsome energy means that it definitely belonged to an unimaginably powerful being. I'm determined to take it for myself. A grand ascension stage being declared in a calm voice. Haha, you can't just decide that for yourself. Everyone else has to agree first. Junior Hu, go ahead and begin the bidding. Another grand ascension stage being chuckled. No one from the other silver cabins said anything, but the tense aura in the air clearly indicated that they were all tempted by the golden spirit blood as well. As for the body integration and spatial tempering stage, attendees on the plaza down below, they were all staring at the drop of blood essence with wide eyes. There was no way that they would be able to obtain such an incredible item, but just being able to witness it was worth the trip here. The base price for this spirit blood is 1 billion spirit stones. Let the bidding. Please wait a moment. I seem to have some recollection of this item, but I'm unable to recall exactly what it is. Would it be possible for me to examine it up close? A male voice rang out, following which a black-robed man with an ordinary appearance rose to his feet on the plaza. You recognize this spirit blood, fellow Taoist. Hu Yuxuang's expression immediately changed slightly upon hearing this. Everyone else also turned their attention toward the black-robed man with surprised expressions, and even the 4 trade guild elders had opened their eyes to see what he had to say. Does this spirit blood release a burst of 5-colored light once every 24 hours? The black-robed man asked. Hu Yuxuang was rather skeptical toward the man's claims, but a hint of delight immediately appeared on her face upon hearing this. How did you know that? Instead of answering the question, the black-robed man replied in an ambiguous manner. I'll have to examine the spirit blood to confirm that I haven't misidentified it. Hu Yuxuang hesitated momentarily before turning to the 4 trade guild elders. What do you think, esteemed elders? What do you think, Brother Ming? The thin elderly man asked as he looked up into the air. If he wants to take a look, then let him. With the 5 of us here, it's not like a grand ascension stage junior like him can do anything, Ming Zun replied from within the golden palace up above. In that case, invite him onto the platform to examine the spirit blood, but directly touching the spirit blood is prohibited, the thin elderly man instructed in a cautious manner. I understand. You can come onto the platform now, fellow Taoist, Hu Yuxuang prompted. Thus, everyone's attention naturally shifted onto the black-robed man. He was already making his way toward the stone platform, and a few moments later, he arrived beside Hu Yuxuang before carefully inspecting the bowl before him. I can almost confirm what this spirit blood is now, but as a final check, would I be able to extract some of the spirit liquid in the bowl before giving a final verdict? The black-robed man asked. Hu Yuxuang's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this, but she still nodded in agreement in the end. All right, but you can't extract too much. Rest assured, fellow Taoist, I won't overstep my boundaries. Please remove the restriction for me, the black-robed man said with a smile. Hu Yuxuang gave an affirmative response before making a hand seal, then thrust a palm toward the bowl. The light barrier above the bowl instantly dissipated amid a dull thump. The man stepped forward before pointing a finger at the bowl, and it shuddered slightly before a small ball of the spirit liquid rose up out of the bowl. Hu Yuxuang's heart eased slightly upon seeing how small the amount of spirit liquid that had been extracted was. However, just as she was lured into a sense of security, the black-robed man casually reached forward, as if he were going to catch the ball of spirit liquid. Spiritual light flashed between Hu Yuxuang's fingers as she prepared to reactivate the restriction over the bowl. However, right at this moment, the thin elderly man's expression abruptly changed, and he roared, "Stop! What do you think you're doing?" He swept a sleeve through the air as he spoke, and his seemingly ordinary hand abruptly transformed into a massive blue palm that came crashing down toward the black-robed man like lightning. Hu Yuxuang's expression changed drastically upon seeing this, and she hurriedly pointed a finger toward the bowl, but it was already too late. The black-robed man cackled as he completely disregarded the descending giant palm, and silver light erupted beneath him before instantly sweeping toward a certain direction. The silver light flashed past, and the bowl abruptly vanished along with its contents. However, right at this moment, the giant blue hand also arrived, sending an inescapable burst of enormous force crashing down upon the black-robed man. All of a sudden, spatial fluctuations erupted above the black-robed man, and a gray shadow appeared before immediately raising a hand, sending a giant crimson palm hurtling directly upward. The two massive palms clashed amid an earth-shattering boom, resulting in powerful shockwaves that sent the three platter-carrying women and Hu Yuxuang flying off the stone platform. No one had expected anyone to attempt a heist during this auction, and even Han Li was rather dumbstruck by what he was seeing. The thin, elderly man wore an enraged expression as he made a hand seal, and an azure crystal ball flew out of his body alongside a small silver hammer. The crystal ball rose up into the air before rotating on the spot, releasing an azure light barrier downward to encompass the entire stone platform. As for the silver hammer, it was caught by the elder before swelling to around 10 feet in size with arcs of silver lightning flashing over its surface. "Who are you, and what gives you the courage to attempt such a brazen heist?" The thin elderly man interrogated a cold voice. Even though the spirit blood had been snatched away, he didn't seem to be too panicked. Both the black-robed man and the gray shadow had already displayed Grand Ascension stage powers, so they definitely couldn't just be a pair of nobodies. The other three trade guild elders also rose to their feet expressionlessly before releasing their own protective treasures, surrounding the black-robed man and the gray shadow from all sides. The heavenly music being played up above drew to an abrupt halt, and the five-colored cloud parted, releasing countless armored guards who instantly filled the air above the entire plaza. At the same time, a series of formations began to appear near the plaza, completely restricting the surrounding area. At this moment, the spiritual light around the gray shadow faded, and he was revealed to be a short gray-robed elderly man with a long beard. "Did you get the right item? Don't let them fool you with a counterfeit," the short elderly man cautioned. "Hee, don't you trust my abilities? This is definitely real ancestral dragon blood, otherwise I wouldn't have struck here," the black-robed man chuckled in response. "Good, looks like we didn't come all the way here and expend all that effort for nothing," the elderly man replied with a pleased expression. The two of them were chatting with one another and completely disregarding the four trade guild elders. The thin elderly man was furious to see this, but he didn't immediately lash out. Instead, he said in a cold voice, "There's no way the two of you can get away now. If you return the spirit blood now, we can view your actions as a result of an impulsive rush of blood to the head and deal a lighter punishment upon you too. Otherwise, don't blame us for what we're about to do." "Haha, return the spirit blood. Why do you think the two of us spent so much effort to plan this heist? There's no way we're returning the item," the black-robed man chortled with a hint of mockery in his eyes. "Cut the chit-chat. Let's get out of here," the short elderly man urged in an impatient manner. "Don't worry, there's no way they'll be able to stop us anyway," the black-robed man said in a nonchalant manner, but he still filled a hand over to produce a dark green formation plate, which he immediately tossed forward. Spiritual light flashed within the formation, following which a green seedling emerged, and the seedling grew to become a massive tree in the blink of an eye. Han Li's pupils immediately contracted at the sight of this giant tree. Chapter 2338, Heavy Promise. "Go," the thin elderly man immediately yelled upon seeing this, then raised his giant silver hammer up high before sending it crashing down viciously toward the center of the stone platform. A rumbling boom rang out as a bolt of thick silver lightning hurtled down toward the giant green tree from above. He knew that their opponents were also Grand Ascension stage beings, so he wouldn't be able to subdue them in a short time. Thus, he had decided to target this massive tree with his attack. He didn't know what purpose this tree was meant to serve, but destroying it was definitely the right thing to do. The other three elders naturally sprang into action without any hesitation as well. 7 or 8 treasures rose up into the air in unison amid a loud buzzing sound, then combined to form a massive mountain that came crashing down viciously from above. Even before the giant mountain had actually landed, it released a storm of invisible threads that were threatening to punch countless holes into the two treasure thieves along with the stone platform beneath them. However, the black-robed man suddenly vanished into the giant tree in a flash amid a burst of raucous laughter. As for the short elderly man, he also sped into the massive tree as a streak of light. The silver lightning struck the tree in the blink of an eye, and countless arcs of lightning sprang over its surface. A charred smell began to waft through the air, and the tree quickly wilted away into ashes, but the duo that was supposed to be inside it was nowhere to be seen. "They got away." The thin elderly man was stunned to see this, as were all of the other trade guild elders. Many formations had been set up in this place in advance, including 5 or 6 flight restrictions, so it was incredible that those two had managed to teleport away so easily. Don't panic, this space is like an impregnable fortress. There's no way that those two could have gotten away. Hold on. They managed to obtain entry talismans that are available only to the elders of this guild, and they've torn through the restrictions to escape. We have to stop them. That voice belonged to Ming Zun, and initially it was quite calm and collected, but it suddenly took a drastic turn as Ming Zun discovered something using his spiritual sense. Immediately thereafter, a ball of golden light emerged in midair before vanishing into the distance after just a few flashes. The elders' expressions changed slightly upon seeing this, and they also set off in pursuit, leaving the auction attendees to exchange bewildered glances with one another. Only then did Hu Yuxuang return to the stone platform in a pale-faced manner, then forced a smile onto her own face as she offered everyone some words of consolation. All of the Grand Ascension stage beings in the flying cabins all wore different expressions upon witnessing this sudden turn of events, but none of them departed from the auction venue. After all, doing so would most likely arouse suspicions that they were accomplices of the black-robed man, or were trying to take advantage of this situation to cause more trouble. Even though they were extremely eager to obtain the ancestral dragon blood, they could only give up on it due to the qualms they held toward the trade guild. Furthermore, judging from the black-robed man's display of confidence, it was most likely the case that pursuing them would be nothing more than a futile task anyway. All of the Grand Ascension stage beings present were extremely wily characters, so they naturally weren't going to do something so with such a terrible risk-to-reward ratio. As expected, the Grand Ascension stage beings of the Trade Guild returned not long after their departure. A faint buzzing sound rang out, and a white light formation appeared on the stone platform, following which Ming Zun and the 4 elders emerged with dark expressions. Their auras were completely unchanged, so it was most likely the case that the 2 treasure thieves had managed to get away. Hu Yuxuang hurriedly made her way over to the 5 of them, before extending a respectful curtsy. Ming Zun waved a dismissive hand toward her, and instructed, "Release portraits of those 2 across the entire trade guild. Make sure to find out who they are and their current location as soon as possible." "Yes, I'll get that organized right away," Hu Yuxuang hurriedly replied before immediately making a hand seal, upon which she abruptly vanished on the spot. Meanwhile, Han Li was seated in his flying cabin with a contemplative look on his face. All of a sudden, he made a grabbing motion, and a dark green wooden sword appeared in his grasp amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. Han Li held the sword horizontally before himself, then stroked the dark green patterns on the blade with 2 fingers in a contemplative manner. The Blood Soul and Zhu Gyur exchanged a glance upon seeing this, but they didn't dare to interrupt him. There may have been an issue with the final auction item, but we'll still abide by past convention and present the intercontinental teleportation spots, our special auction item. I will be hosting this segment of the auction in person, Ming Zun said in a calm manner. His words created another stir in the venue, but no one was truly surprised to hear this. Generally speaking, an auction would always conclude after the most valuable auction items were sold. However, it was a signature trait of the He Lion Trade Guild's auctions to save the intercontinental teleportation spots for last, and that wasn't something that would be changed for no good reason. However, never had the manager of the Trade Guild hosted this part of the auction in person. As such, even though the majority of people had no intention of securing a teleportation spot, they were still paying close attention to the proceedings. Han Li also returned to his senses from his train of thought and temporarily cast whatever he was thinking aside. In contrast with the ancestral dragon blood, which he couldn't even verify the authenticity of, it was far more important for him to secure spots to travel to the other continents so he could reunite with Nangong Wan as soon as possible. The rest of the auction progressed extremely smoothly. Perhaps it was due to the fact that all of the teleportation spots had been switched to the Blood Sky continent, but not many people were eager to claim them. Thus, Han Li was able to secure several spots at a price that was only slightly higher than the base price, and that was naturally a pleasant surprise for him. Today's auction concludes here. You may now leave this space. Thank you for your patience, Ming Zun said with a smile as he cupped his fist in a salute after the final teleportation spot was sold. Many of the auction's attendees on the plaza were still quite bewildered by what they had seen, but they all hurriedly rose to their feet and returned Ming Zun's salute. Thus, all of them began to depart from the plaza under the guidance of the Trade Guild servants. Shortly thereafter, only the Grand Ascension stage beings in the flying cabins remained. "My apologies for showing you something so embarrassing, fellow Taoists. Never has an auction item been stolen from our trade guild since its founding. If anyone can help us capture those two thieves, our trade guild will be sure to reward you handsomely. Not only will you be able to make 3 requests to our trade guild that are within the guild's realm of capability, you can take the ancestral dragon blood as part of your reward as well," Ming Zun declared in a calm manner. "Are you being serious, fellow Taoist? You won't go back on your word, will you?" All of the Grand Ascension stage beings drew a sharp breath upon hearing this. Even for beings of their caliber, the reward being offered by the He-Lion Trade Guild was extremely alluring. I wouldn't dare to say that our guild is the most powerful force in the spirit realm, but it's still quite a reputable and renowned one, so we wouldn't go back on our word. This offer will stand until those two are captured, and it doesn't matter to us how that's achieved," Ming Zun replied with a smile. "That's all I needed to hear," the Mayfly being chuckled coldly, seemingly rather confident in his ability to track down those two thieves. "Brother Ming, may I ask if you and the others managed to catch a glimpse of those two at all as you were pursuing them? Do you know what type of teleportation technique they used? How could they have successfully teleported away when there are so many restrictions set up here?" Another Grand Ascension stage being asked in a cautious manner. "The 5 of us had already chased them down, but they had set up a temporary teleportation formation in advance nearby, so they were able to teleport away. We don't know what they did to that formation, but none of our patrols were able to detect it. As for the method they employed to leave this space, that was something I'd never seen before, so I can't offer much insight into that," Ming Zun replied with furrowed brows. "Thank you for this information, Brother Ming. I know what I need to do now," the Grand Ascension stage being said. After that, a few more Grand Ascension stage beings asked some questions pertaining to the ancestral dragon blood and the black-robed man, but unfortunately, Ming Zun wasn't able to give any definitive answers. At this point, some of the Grand Ascension stage beings were already beginning to depart, and Ming Zun displayed no intention to stop them. "Let's go. We don't have time to search for those two. Let's go back and wait for the teleportation to the Blood Sky continent. I'm guessing we won't have to wait for too long," Hanley said as he rose to his feet. The Blood Soul and Zhu naturally offered affirmative responses. Thus, moments later, the 3 of them departed from the flying chamber within a ball of azure light before heading directly toward the exit of this space. After returning to the pavilion where they were staying, Hanley issued a few instructions to the Blood Soul and Zhu before entering his secret chamber. As soon as he took a seat, he flipped a hand over to release a ball of golden light from his storage bracelet, which transformed into the shimmering golden page of the golden Jade tome that he had just purchased before landing in his grasp.